You're listening to Character Crusade Unbound, episode number 4. I'm Stu.
And I'm Joe.
And I'm Matt.
Welcome to the podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get this going.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Oh, poor you.
We ready?
I think we're ready.
All right. Let's get into podcast proper, shall we? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, and welcome, Matt, back to the podcast after a long break.
It's nice to be here. It really is.
Wonderful to have you back.
There's no TSA screening in order to get in
Sorely
here.
Missed. Not yet. Not yet.
Not
Not
yet.
yet. Not yet.
I'm
It's
sorry,
coming.
sir. Can you set your bag to the side
Please take off your shoes.
and your belt and your
Yeah.
jacket?
Oh,
And-
wait. Put your shoes back on.
Whoa! What are you doing?
God, man.
This is a small room.
Oh, we see.
Yeah.
There's a reason you were wearing the belt. Put the belt back on.
Right. You know what? Let's get started here. We're gonna catch up with Matt here in a little bit when we get into character craft.
Mm-hmm.
But first, let's kind of just run down the usual announcements. If there's anything else you guys want to throw in, certainly let me know.
Alrighty.
This is the Unbound podcast, Season 1. And Season 1 is all about random Skyrim roleplay. If you're interested in getting involved in this as it happens, or if you're listening to this at some point in the future and the live streams are already done, you can still follow along. This content is timeless, after all.
Although in the future, it'd be in the past.
Yes, in the future it
So
would be in the
technically,
past.
it wouldn't be timeless. It would just be time independent.
Ooh, I
Sure.
like the sound of that. So anyways, if you want to get involved, the play rules for whatever season is most current can be found on unbound.charactercrusade.com. That is also where you are going to find the submission form. So if you want to submit questions to the podcast and have your questions answered on the podcast, that is where you would submit them in the web form. I want to thank everybody who submitted for this episode. We have a pretty good selection of questions tonight, 5 or 6 that we're going to cover later on in the show. So that is important. If you want to get involved in the community, the place to do that is on our Discord server. You can go to Discord. What is the URL?
Discord.charactercrusade.com.
Yes. Yes.
I haven't forgotten that.
That's what I was gonna say.
Discord.charactercrusade.com.
You beat me to it. I was totally going to say
I
the
was
same
totally
thing.
going to say
Yeah,
that.
it was on the tip of Joe's tongue.
When in doubt, .charactercrusade.com.
Yes, that will get you to all the right places, typically. So yes, discord.charactercrusade.com. We've got some text channels set up there for those of you who are participating in this to share your characters, to get announcements on what's coming up, and also to talk to each other
Are they
and
allowed
ask
to do
each
that?
other questions and all that kind of stuff. Talk
Totally
about
what it's
homework.
for.
Well, as long as they don't talk when we need to be quiet.
That's true. When we're doing room tone, no talking.
Yes.
Or typing.
Yeah, no
or
talking.
mousing.
So anyway, yes, Discord server, check. Any information on anything that we're working on, you can find on charactercrusade.com. If you go to the main page, you will now find a full schedule there that will take you out through the end of Season 1 and to the kickoff of Season 2. So everything is pre-scheduled. So you can go out there and get to those items, those pre-made live stream events that are on YouTube, and you can set alarms on those notifications. And that brings up another point. Some interesting things happened this week with regard to, well, I was actually late last week with regard to YouTube and revelations about the way that their notification algorithms work. If you want to get information, if you want to be alerted when things are going on CouchWarrior TV, it is not enough to subscribe to CouchWarrior TV. You must also hit that alarm bell. Ring the bell, ladies and gentlemen. Set an alert.
Bing.
Okay? And I would say that is the way that you are going to be most likely to get a notification. they were very, very cagey about whether or not that even works 100% of the time.
Well, because they know best what you should see from
Correct.
a notification
Correct.
standpoint.
Yes. So rest assured, YouTube is doing everything in their power to make sure you never see any of the content produced on this channel.
Unless
So-
they deem it necessary
Right.
for you to see.
Right.
Yes.
Thus, that is why we're always throwing at you these URLs.charactercrusade.com, because we have to self-promote, otherwise we die.
That's true.
All right, so that
right.
really does it for announcements. Everything is out there, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of upgrades have been done since the last episode. We have made a number of those improvements in the organization of the website as well. Took away a bunch of stuff that was just kind of taking up space and tried to simplify so that you can find stuff, okay? So if all else fails, go there, and you'll get links to everything, including all of our social media.
Go there anyway.
Yeah.
All the time. Even when
Yeah.
you think you shouldn't, go there.
Right. And
Click
all
links, visit stuff, listen, watch, read.
all the branding stuff is done, all that business.
I love the new branding.
Which reminds me, let's also be aware, I put some announcements out there, but in case you're not aware, the Pocket Legends podcast was rebranded to Pocket Odysseys this week, and all of the content in our archive was re-rendered and re-recorded and blah, blah, blah. But that...
So it should all be out there by now, though.
Yeah, it's all out there. Everything should be populated. Just make
So-
sure that if you're going to search for it someplace like iTunes or whatever, you're searching for
Odyssey.
Pocket Odysseys.
Yep.
Okay? Pocket Odysseys.
Do we have
Okay.
something short on our website? Do we have a custom URL?
We have the podcast.
yeah,
CharacterCrusade.com.
Yeah, or you can also go to Pocket. You can go to pocket.charactercrusade.com and find it there too. So
It's only
There
kind
you
of
go.
disturbing.
You know.
All right.
yeah, right. Okay, guys, let's get into our first segment, which is Character Craft. Character Craft is where we talk about our character experiences since episode 3.
Mine's going to be kind of short.
Yeah, Matt's will be short, but that's okay.
I've gotten to level 1.
That's good, but with a new character, right?
Yeah, he's been in Winterhold for all of a minute.
I
All
like
right.
it.
And he's
All right.
cold.
All right.
He's not really dressed appropriately.
Well, let's continue with that thought,
But he
Matt.
has a hat.
Just let's start there. Matthew, tell us how things have been going. Tell us what you did in light of the fact that you were so busy. What have you been doing?
Well, you know what's great is that when we kicked off Unbound, you guys gave some very specific rules on how we were going to do it, and I broke all of them because I didn't pay attention to the rules. So what I did after I got back from my
Right.
significant odyssey and sojourn and work and all of that stuff, I went out and I read the rules, and I said, wow, this is really easy. I could do that. And so last night I fired up this game called Skyrim. It's awesome, right? You guys should play it. And I actually created a character, and I followed all the rules. I didn't actually do the same die rolling as I was
So-
planning to do last time, but I ended up with a Khajiit.
Were you using the Unbound mod or
Yes.
a variation of?
Unbound.
Okay.
And I turned on a couple of the other mods in there just because I wanted
And
to
this
have...
was PC.
Yes, this
Okay.
is on PC. It's actually this PC that I have in the
Oh,
room. So
all
if you
right.
want to see my Khajiit and add more minutes to his game time, that would be awesome. We could do that later, right? But new character has actually been in existence for, seriously, about a minute. I did
All
the
right,
same
so-
thing I did last time. I said, okay, I'm going to look at the race menu. I'm actually just going to sort of toggle through and not pay attention to what I have. Ended up with a Khajiit.
All right.
Went through all of the characteristics of the character
Okay,
and just
all the
randomly
looks.
selected stuff and went through it, and then went out to a random name generator and basically picked a random name, but I wanted
right.
something really short. Basically, cat is sort of what it turns into, but that's okay.
With a K.
With a K apostrophe, right?
Or is it QAT?
No, it might be KHAT or something. I
No,
don't know
that'd be
what it is.
Quat. That's not right.
It's cat or something. So I don't know what it is. So I'm like, okay, here we go, and it says your quest has begun or whatever it is, right? And I ended up showing up in Winterhold. It was very dark. It was very snowy.
Oh, yeah, that's
and,
way up there.
I'm looking at nothing. I mean, I'm like, okay.
Were-
great, I'm
so
in the
you
middle of
were
nowhere.
were you in the town of Winterhold? The
No,
actual
I was
city?
out on the outskirts
Oh,
somewhere.
okay,
I walked
okay.
through a little archway and looked down on nothing. And so I said, okay,
All
it's,
right.
probably not a good time for me to start this, or I won't sleep for a week. So,
Okay.
so that's how far we are.
All right,
But
yeah, that's
I
good.
followed the rules. So that's
All
where I am.
right.
So,
All right.
so when we get to episode 5 and you say, hey, how far did you get since episode 4? It's going to be epically bigger than this.
At least twice.
At least twice as many minutes.
I love it. All right.
Cool. So you got a Khajiit up in Winterhold.
I have a Khajiit in Winterhold, and I would be happy to post a picture somewhere. I don't know what just made noise.
That'd be my
but,
laptop.
So
we'll post a picture or two of progress as I go through. One of the things I don't like about this particular machine is that when I want to take a screenshot, the print screen button is tiny and hidden in amongst the other things. So you want to quickly stab at print screen and you can't do it. So
when you got giant sausage fingers.
I know, right? I want to get a foot button, right?
There you go. Foot pedal. Screenshot foot pedal.
That would be awesome.
God.
Actually, maybe I could just get it set right into the seat, right? Because then when I'm really getting into it, I get screenshots all the time.
There you go.
Don't
kick off.
Cheek shots.
Cheek shots, right? Don't you lean when people are?
He's got a sensor in each back pocket. You know, he just.
I've been told
Actually,
I cuss a
it's
lot.
It's only
Do
right
you?
here.
I can definitely see that. Yeah.
Actually, I think that
Why
having
would you
it
say
recording
that?
while you were playing would be pretty interesting.
I don't know.
That
if
shit
that
would be priceless, man.
I don't think that'd be a good idea.
Dude, we could make some extra scratch on that. We could make a special limited edition double DVD send out to people of just all
Rated R.
yeah.
Cutscenes.
Yeah.
These are all the bloopers of Joe
I
cussing.
know. All right. Well,
So that's my entire update.
that is a good start.
What kind of equipment?
Matthew.
What kind of equipment did
There's
you end
nothing.
with?
I have nothing. I have
Oh, you
fists.
ended up with nothing.
While we're doing
I
this, I'm
have
actually gonna.
fists.
I have fists.
Holy
I have
cow.
fists, a hat, and a robe. And I
Fists
think
of
that's it.
rage.
But I also have, I think, 1,846 gold.
Okay, so you got
Oh,
something
shit,
to work
that's
with.
great.
I can go buy a lot
You
of
can
stuff.
go buy. Well, you can buy some stuff. It'd be amazing how quickly that goes.
That 18
Unfortunately,
real
you're
life.
like
Quickly.
in the town that has the shittiest merchant ever.
I know.
Oh,
There's
God,
like nothing,
yeah.
really nothing to buy
No,
there.
no,
but,
there's
Would
no
you
Smith.
like to buy some sort of an old sweet roll?
I'd like to get out of there as quick as I could.
Oh man,
All right. Well, how about you, Joe?
sweet.
Let's move on to Van. What's going on?
All right. Well, I powered through some fairly annoying and troublesome issues with my setup as far as just game crashing.
Right.
I got stuck in a. What did I get? Oh, I got stuck by Oratheim, which is just outside of Whiterun. Not too far, actually. It's not far from that bridge as you go down.
Oh, it's by Rorikstad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right, Rorikstad.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
kind of on
gotcha,
that
sure.
on
Cave.
that.
It's a cave.
Yeah, it's a cave. So I got stuck at Ortheim, and every time I tried to go in, I kept getting a crash CTD,
Mm-hmm.
and I could not figure it out for the life of me. And it wound up coming down to something with immersive armors. I don't think immersive armors per se was giving me the trouble, but it was not happy with something.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what that something was, but I do know that when I took it out, then things ran just fine.
Weird.
So, in light of trying to troubleshoot all of my various mods to see what it wasn't playing nice with, I just took it out and I replaced it with Armonizer. So, which has some similar sets of armor, so that was fine. One of those is actually the ring mail. Van was wearing the ring mail at the time, so when I took immersive armors, then suddenly he was sitting in there in his skivvies. So that wasn't working for me.
Right.
Of course, I had already smithed it up and improved it. So
Right, of course.
but I did replace it with Armonizer, and I just I used Add Item, another
sure.
mod, to give myself the same ring mail armor so that I could get him set back to where he was, at least the look.
Right.
I mean, it
Makes
wasn't as
sense.
good because of course I didn't have it geared up, but so I got that sorted out finally, and I went into Ortheim, whatever you want to call it.
Ortheim.
cleared that out. And I also have, what is it? It's
A sword?
I have two.
Okay.
Two swords.
That's twice as sharp as
I
what
know.
I've got.
Both sides. It's 4 times.
4 times as sharp.
I know.
And 2 hilts even.
But you've got claws, so you got like 10.
And apparently I have 2 Horker loaves, so I'm good.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Clap those
set.
together.
Yeah, yeah.
Like make
Danger Horker weapon.
squishy, horsey sounds. Slap, slap, slap.
You.
It's like you're riding a horker into town.
No, I've got Frontiers of Skyrim or something like that.
Okay.
Basically, Frontier Fortresses, or it's another mod that adds various towns and settlements
All right.
into Skyrim, and there's actually one kind of nestled right into the mountains across from that cave. So I went over there, checked that out, did a little mining, and now I've powered through like 12 levels since then and now.
Right.
So
Wow.
I did a lot, but I can't remember all the stuff I did.
Yeah. Joe, if you remember from episode 3, Joe was struggling mightily with all these technical issues. And in the last episode, you came up well short of our goal.
Yeah.
So you were kind of
I was-
behind the 8 ball going into episode 4.
I
You're
was
not the caboose anymore.
So he
No.
powered through big
So
time.
yeah, I think I ended up at 11 on our last soiree.
Where you were supposed to be drop dead 18.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, yeah.
So now I'm at 25.
Too much peer
Yeah,
pressure. I
which
couldn't
is
make it.
great.
So I'm almost to the minimum, but I'm
He's within striking
but
distance.
I'm over the drop dead. So I'm just writhing in agony right now.
Yeah.
Is this one of those where if you don't keep up, you got to end?
No.
You're
Yeah.
kicked out?
No,
I didn't
well,
think so.
I think we're gonna go over that, but no.
Yeah.
No. So let's just talk about I think the personality a little bit.
Let's do that, Joe.
So I'm trying to have a serious discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Everyone's listening to Joe now.
Jesus.
Oh, my God.
Tell us about it, Joe.
What a douche.
Tell us the story.
All right, end stream right now.
This is over. I'm not going to put up with this anymore.
So we all if you've been following along, you know that Van is a sailor.
Bunch
He
of
washed up on
submariners. Come on.
shore and
Yeah.
kind of right now his whole drive is all about he's greedy. So he's all about making the money. He's following the money.
Mm-hmm.
So that means bandits because he lost Miko. So he already has a chip on his shoulder about bandits.
Yeah.
Turns out that bandits are also a good source of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yes, they are. They tend to be.
so Van he's kind of a bandit. He's in bandit hunter mode right now.
Cool.
Collecting gold and things. And the other things that Van has found can be lucrative is raiding Nordic barrows.
Sure. Yeah.
So he's all about dungeon crawling,
Mm-hmm.
bandit killing, and surprisingly, selling potions.
Nice.
Is selling potions lucrative?
It can be.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
because
for sure.
I'm probably going to learn about being a merchant here and buying and trading
Oh yeah, cool.
in a way that has never happened before.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So
Just don't kill me thinking that I'm a bandit.
so what was I gonna say?
All the stuff you were buying and
Something
selling.
about stuff.
Oh,
and
potions.
were
bandits.
lucrative potions.
Potions.
Yeah.
Alchemy. That is something I did not really figure into the equation when I first started this character.
Really?
Just because I don't know, it just didn't seem like a direction that I would take him. But
Right.
turns out that he's actually taken to alchemy and potions, poisons specifically,
Nice.
fairly well. So I think
Yeah.
he's definitely, I've taken him kind of up that side with Ordinator on the poison front.
You can kind of see that, if someone being the opportunist that
Right.
he is, if someone came to him and said, "Hey, did you know you can mash up this?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you can use the liquid that comes from it to do this terrible thing to this person," right?
Oh,
Like, you'd be like all
yeah.
over that, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I could totally see that happening.
So he's got his crossbow now, and he's getting pretty proficient at potions. I've leveled him several times, as often as I can, at Arcadia's. He has now finally made his way south, and he's been hanging around Whiterun and doing quite a bit lately.
Okay.
He's learned at least 15 levels through training with Arcadia.
Mm-hmm.
The way he figures it, she may constantly be talking about how ill he looks, but as
Yeah.
weird as that is, if she's got something to teach me,
Yeah.
all right, we'll go with it. We'll entertain her.
So, I mean, are you making enough money now that with all the stuff that you're doing, that the training is still affordable at level 50 plus? Or is it to the point now where it's getting like out of range?
No. I've been able to generate enough coin where I can still. I mean, I think he's got about 8,000 gold right now.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
Do you spend a lot of time at the alchemy table? in
A
order
lot
to
more
do
than I
that?
anticipated. Between that and smithing. Now, so I was saying earlier to you that the followers are kind of a blessing and a curse. I've got 3 followers right now. One's a pure mage, and is great for he just zaps lightning all the time,
Mhm.
or shock, whatever. One is kind of a spell sword, so he'll vacillate between the two, and then there's Skjarn, which is pretty much just a straight up fighter. So it's a kind of a nice mix.
Mhm.
The spell sword, actually, I think he's the one. He actually will heal me too every now and again, so that's kind of a nice
Wow,
bonus.
that is good. Yeah,
So
that's really
thanks,
good.
man. That's
Aces.
That's Belrend. Belrend, it's Valgris, Belrend, and Skjarn. I think those are the 3. But
Sounds like a law firm to me.
they
It does.
they will come in, they'll swoop in and steal a lot of my experience, but I'll make a lot of that up in just maintaining their gear.
Yeah.
So, Van is kind of all about smithing because, he's fairly self-sufficient. So he wants to do this stuff and not have to
Yeah.
pay someone to do it for him. So smithing, alchemy are his primary modes for crafting. And then I think it's sneak and there's another one I can't remember. Archery. One-handed. Those are kind of his other perks.
One-handed archery.
One-handed archery is really good.
That's excellent.
Yeah, you can almost pull that off with a
Almost.
crossbow.
He does use a crossbow. Almost. It's not a hand crossbow. But
I'm going to ask a logistics question, though. Followers won't gather stuff for you at all, will they? Because it would be nice to have them pick up all the flowers.
not by default, no.
Okay. I just didn't know if there was a way to
But
do that.
you can give it to them.
Well, I know that you can give it to them and they can hang on to it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering whether or not while you're,
No,
milling about, if they would
unless
start
there's
gathering
a
stuff for
mod
you.
out there that would tweak that, they won't by default, no.
Okay.
If you're really into enchanting, you can get them to harvest souls for you, though,
Oh.
which is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Which is cool. You load them up with empty soul gems and then give them a weapon that steals souls. And then every once in a while, you just go and swoop into their inventory and pick up all your
Oh.
filled soul gems.
I picked up a really nice a nice necklace that will restore magic in a weapon.
Oh yeah,
It'll
that's
reload it basically. It'll recharge it.
Really? Excuse me.
A certain point
yeah.
amount. So
Nice.
because I put an enchantment on my crossbow, so when I'm going into crossbow mode, I'll put on that necklace so that way the charge is always there.
Nice.
Yeah, that's
So
cool.
that's-
See,
that's
now
really nice.
you're using you're using Anai Scion's enchantments, right? So I'm pretty sure that comes from that.
As far yeah, I've got like yes, one of the mists.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that's
winter,
a nice
winter mist. I think it is. I
So-
might even have summer mist.
One of the things I was wondering, and I don't know, maybe you've tested this, or maybe it would make more sense for you to test it than me, but he has he has enchantments in his mod that allow you to accumulate wealth, right? So every day if you have this magic item, you're wearing this magic item
every
every day or every hour that you're wearing this item, you get like 10 gold. I'm wondering what would happen if you gave all that stuff to your NPCs and they wore it. Would they acquire all that money?
I actually have a set of bracers with that enchantment on it.
Yeah.
That I think it's like 20 gold a day or something like that.
Yeah.
And I do have one of my followers wearing it. I just haven't really paid much attention.
I would check his inventory and see what it's doing.
It's equivalent to
that's a
donating
good
plasma.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I wonder about the weapons then too, like
Right.
the enchantments, right? Like if you were to give one of your followers an enchanted weapon that was drained, and they had one of those things equipped,
would it fill it up?
Would it fill it back up again?
Yeah, I don't know.
Cool test.
Yeah, it'd be
That's a good
interesting to
idea.
know because that would allow you to get a little bit more utility out of all those followers. They could,
Right.
and you could be swapping out, get 2 crossbows and have one that's constantly charging while you're
Yeah.
using the other, right?
Well,
It'd be
yeah.
like-
I mean, who wants to be
Interesting.
swapping out half a dozen different circlets throughout the day too?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that would free you up to do other stuff
Yeah.
if the followers could fill that role.
Yeah, so he does have
So-
that. That's a good point. I should check that as I play to
Mhm.
see what's going on.
I'd be curious to know how that turns out because I was thinking about that in one of my episodes. I think it was the last episode that I put out, just questioning whether or not that would work with the wealth.
I don't know. I mean,
You know?
seems like it should, but
Yeah, and like, I mean, traditionally too, your followers always level up as you level up.
right.
But there's magic items in that set too that
Oh,
allow
true.
you to level faster.
Yep.
So would it
Yep.
be possible?
Well, and
to-
that's the other. That's one of the other points
know.
that I did leverage because I do have a couple items that I've got what is it? I think it's a circlet of training.
Yeah.
That'll
Sounds
give
right.
me a 3% increase in my experience. So I wear
Okay.
that when I can. That has helped me reach my levels faster.
Right.
Nice.
And I think I've got another one it's very similar. And I can't remember what it is, but it's just a touch different.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I can't remember what it is, but so Van spent almost all his time up north. That's kind of what he did, because that's where he landed. That's where his ship
Right.
busted up, and for the longest time he wanted to go south. I got to get south. It's just too damn cold up here. So, but there he was, solitude and all the different things happening up there,
All the snow and the
and the stuff
Wind
and
and
the
the
wind but he finally made his way south and has been spending his time now in Whiterun. So he found,
Tropical Whiterun.
well, compared to Winterhold,
Right?
Yeah,
Oh,
I know.
I know.
Right? Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So he is now spending a lot of time in Whiterun. He's been keeping his followers' gear up, and I'm at a point now. I need to find a location. I need to find a home.
Yeah.
I could use one of the vanilla ones. I'm not sure. Even if I chose a mod, a player home, I'm not sure where I would want it.
Right.
So right now, that's like kind of my biggest reason for not having a base of operations. I'm just not sure where the best place is.
Are you at a point where you're stashing stuff places because
Yes, poor Scarn. He is my pack mule.
all of the
He gets-
followers get so
He
overloaded.
gets all my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest reason he gets all my stuff is because he's essential.
Yeah.
So I know I won't lose it if he dies.
And he's also kind of a dick, so he deserves it.
Kind of.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to tell me that you had Nazim as a follower for a minute.
Oh, God, no. The only reason I take him on as a follower is so I could go dump him off in a river somewhere.
Do you get to the Cloud District very often? Oh, of course you don't.
Jerk.
Yeah. Yeah, just this week I stumbled across a video on YouTube of somebody who had just set Nazim's lines to hip hop music and had all this crazy stuff, and it was
That's
and they had him, Nazim doing dance with sunglasses on. And do you get to the Cloud District very often? Oh no, of course you don't. Go, of course you don't. It's just pretty funny stuff. I got a kick
That's
out of it.
fantastic.
I'll send you the
is-
link if I find it.
I love it.
Nazim
Yeah.
hip hop.
It was pretty
Oh.
good.
That's
DJ Nazim.
badass. Yeah.
So let's see what else.
DJ Nazim.
It's kind of what it looked like.
So right now, Van's been chasing bandits, taking on every job that he can get. So he's really big into asking for all the rumors and all the jobs because he's all about the coin. So let's go make some coin. And that's kind of where he's at right now. He's got the followers to help back him up so he can do that pretty easily.
Right.
And let's see, right now I actually am in Whiterun. So I think what's on the docket right now is Orphan's Rock to go get the Hag Raven. So he ran into, is it a niece? I think it's a witch out in the woods. She's got her little cabin.
Yeah.
So we ran into a niece, and she didn't seem to mind us looking around until we got into the basement.
Of course.
She didn't like that very much.
Then she didn't like that so much. So I found that the paper mirror.
Okay.
With my name all over it. What
Yeah.
the hell is this? So that was our goal for the moment. Find
Okay.
all the volumes of the paper mirror because it's literally has my name written into it.
Uh-huh.
And it's promising all this glory.
Of course.
Oh.
Which
So now he's a
who-
megalomaniac.
Yeah, how would he not want that?
Which turned into a complete disappointment once we found it all. But,
No.
we did complete all that.
Wow.
So that was kind of fun because it was like this little mini kind of focus.
Yeah.
So, paging through, and there's my name, Glory. We got to find this stuff.
Everything else on hold. We're doing this now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we did that, but that kind of triggered off a point of kind of a superstition that I think Van would have insofar as witches are concerned.
Okay.
I'm kind of tying in, witches being a bad luck or omen to, from a seafaring perspective.
Sure.
So that gives him the reason even more so to go and hunt down these hag ravens and
Right.
so now I can justifiably go hunt bandits because they got stuff, and I can go hunt witches because they're bad luck.
Yeah.
And because then whenever
So-
you want to in public, you can say, I've eradicated all the hag ravens from my semen.
She's a witch. How do you know she's a witch? She looks like one.
No.
Yeah.
Okay,
What else
we did do the nose. So
Uh,
that's kind of where he's at the moment.
All
He's got a few odds and ends. The very last thing I did was go out and get and then return Armin's father's sword.
Amryn.
Amryn.
that's-
Amryn, yes.
Okay, the guy in Whiterun?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
So we took that job on
Got
because
it.
he was going to pay us for it. And turns out that was actually like the perfect time to cut because he also trains you in light one-handed weapons, which is what I use.
Sure.
And it was just enough experience to get me up to 25.
Nice.
Boom.
So boom.
Transition.
And for those, I did notice on Discord
Mm-hmm.
that packet loss rivaled my mammoth meat with Charis eggs.
Oh, yeah.
So
Like 1,200 and some
Oh, it was
Taurus eggs.
What?
Oh,
he
gosh.
harvested, yeah.
So
Was this a little known side quest or what?
well, actually, it was down underneath Frostfall or the lighthouse.
Frost Flow.
Frost,
I think it's Frost Flow, isn't it?
something like that.
Lighthouse.
Yeah, actually, I did do that too. As a sailor, I felt an obligation to figure out what happened to the lighthouse keeper. So I wove that into the story. So now, as a, the being, if a keeper goes down, that you put his remains in so you can forever watch so that was kind of how I tied that in. But,
Right.
yeah, there's a boatload of Charis eggs if you want them underneath there.
Yeah.
But so I decided, and I'll end with this, that I was going to see how long with Hunterborn it took to actually skin and butcher and harvest a mammoth.
Okay, what's the
All right.
result?
This is
So-
like how to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll.
Kind of. So
Mhm.
I got interrupted once by being attacked by a saber cat.
That's
I-
kind of an important thing to pay attention to.
I had to pause and take care of business there.
Yeah,
So I
saber
get
cats.
back to my. So
Yeah.
it took me about 54 hours of in-game time to harvest
Wow.
all of the hide,
Basically,
the meat,
two
and the
full days.
ingredients. 2 days plus some
Yeah.
to get. But I ended up with, I don't even know how much hide. I can't remember. A ton.
I've
Something
made a road out of it.
Yeah.
almost
That's funny.
1,400 units of meat.
My God.
The tusks, of course.
Who do you even
Welcome
sell
to
that
Ben's
to?
Deli.
I still have raw meat to sell because all the vendors run out of gold before I can sell it all.
Yeah, I know.
So,
That's
note to
a
Oh
self.
lot of
God.
If you've got time to kill, just keep hitting
But you
that
know what?
button.
I feel totally gypped now when you go and you kill a mammoth and you get like 2 units of meat. Now knowing that I've been gypped out
And
of
I think-
1,398 units of mammoth meat, I feel like
I know.
I think according to the author of Hunterborn 2, it's on an average, it's like a 1-to-1, so 1 U.S. pound per. So he's got like almost
1,500
1,500
pounds.
pounds of 1,400 pounds of
Yeah.
raw mammoth meat. So
I know there was a point, but I don't know which. I suppose it was Hunterborn, but it was a long time ago that I actually did the same thing where I tried to completely process a mammoth, and I remember the same thing. Like,
oh yeah, you
just
think you're
having
never going to
so
get done.
much meat. Like, what the hell do I do with all this? Like, it's just crazy.
Does
Yeah.
does it go into your inventory while you're
At
slaying the animal, or
yeah,
does
at
it
like
just
fif-
pile up?
50 increments at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and then it gives you a little message saying you got to spend more time.
Yeah, yeah,
Ha ha. Long way to
After
go.
about 8 or
Yeah.
12 of those, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to finish. And then all of a sudden it stops giving me dialogue. I'm like, oh, there it is.
yeah,
Wow, 1,395.
yeah.
Wow.
And
All
by the
right.
way, you're severely thirsty, severely fatigued,
Oh, God, no.
severely hungry because you haven't paused.
Thank
You
God I
haven't
don't have any
slept
of
in
those
2.5
on because that,
days.
yeah.
You know,
so
see,
tired.
Here's the thing. Here's what I think is brilliant about this, though, right? Is think about that. 2 full days spent processing this mammoth. Now, imagine the crew of characters that he's described, and now imagine the 2 full fucking days of conversation that went on between them as they sat around this gigantic
Watching
carcass.
him.
And like, my wrist is so damn sore from skinning. Someone take over. You know, like,
Well, and this
Oh
is
my
all
God.
with just a bone hunting knife.
well, maybe that's why it took you so long.
Probably, because why are those things so hard to find?
Well, you just got to make them. You just got to.
I mean, I've
those
got a
things.
bone
Like an-
hunting knife, but I can't.
Can't you make like an ebony blade or
I
something
need-
for hunting?
Yeah.
The steel ones or some.
I made myself an iron one.
Did you?
Yeah.
Maybe I got to look to see if
Yeah,
my
they're in there.
options a little better.
They're in there. You just gotta. They're in there buried with all the other items you can craft. You
All
just
right.
got to dig
I
around.
must be just overlooking them.
Go. Yeah. Just open the
'Cause
menu.
I need a better knife.
Open the menu and search for hunting, and then you'll be able to see everything you can make.
I'll
Because
never
you should be able
to.
to make a hunting knife in every category.
Well, yeah, that's what
Right,
I.
so-
Yeah. So
Otherwise,
I,
you're just sort of rubbing a rib against it,
I
hoping it's
know.
going to cut.
Well, you know, it will allow you to use a sharp rock too. I guess. So
Yeah, I guess.
at least I didn't have.
Be damn sharp.
Then it's tenderized as well.
Oh, well, yeah, you just. It's like you skinned an entire mammoth with a paring knife.
Or a
I mean,
toothbrush.
and these other 3 clowns standing around the whole time.
Yeah,
like,
they
yeah.
could have helped.
Vargas is like, I'll just bless you while you do this. I mean, this is beyond.
I'll just keep
this is-
healing
I
you to
can't-
keep
yeah, I
you
can't-
awake.
You're going to
Yeah.
make me carry it. I'm not going to help you at all. I'm going to sit over here.
Oh no, Skarn's the only pack mule I've got. He's the only one I give stuff to.
But that's
that
what I
poor-
mean. He's going to be like, dude, you're just going to load me down. I'm not going to help
I
you.
just got to give him
Yeah.
a little praise and stroke his ego, and he'll be happy to
He'll
do
be
it.
fine. Yeah.
Free meat.
You know, Skarn, I divide this up, but I really don't trust anyone else.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
I wouldn't trust anyone else to hold my meat.
You're the only one for me, Skarn.
Here. You're my most trusted companion. You can handle my meat, no one else. That's perfect.
I give him all the bones too.
It's interesting, right? How, as soon as Joe starts talking, it's all about meat and bones and semen. It just never ends.
I don't know what you're talking about.
He's talking about a mammoth.
I'm just talking about a seafaring man
Mammoth hunter.
making his way in the world.
A seafaring mammoth hunter.
We borrow things we learned from hunting whales.
To hunt the elusive mammoth.
They hit it with a harpoon and it just drags them around the valley until it's dead.
Actually, that would be epic. No!
Let's say, okay, so Joe had some success here, right? You made a bunch of levels, got up to 25.
Yep,
You're
made
within
some
striking
lost time.
distance.
Yep.
And a lot of meat.
And a lot of meat.
Yes.
You
should open a deli, by the way.
So in episode 3, I left off at level 19. I didn't make it to the minimum either. I made it to the drop dead, but I didn't make it to the minimum part of the range. So I left off at 19. And that is also kind of where I made the decision that I was going to kind of do a live journals, basically a let's play, right? And so the last time that we talked, Raiden and Goldir had made it to Solitude. They had recovered Dawnbreaker from Meridia's temple, and then made the decision, okay, it was time. We're going to do full-on Dawn Guard. So basically, I immediately started, picking up the journey there, right, where started at Solitude, made our way to Riften, went through that whole sequence, joined the Dawn Guard, got the information about, the business going on. It was at that point you're returning there and you're having to make a lot of excuses about why you went to Dim Hollow Crypt and why you brought Serana back home and why you're coming back empty-handed and why in God's green earth you left an Elder Scroll in the hands of Harkon. All this stuff. That's what happens.
Why did you do that?
The way that I chalked it up to, I chalked it up to the fact that he found himself standing in the center of a vampire lair, surrounded by vampires and their home turf on all sides, and that going after the Elder Scroll was suicide.
So you're saying that the odds were a little bit against him?
Yeah, the odds were a little bit against him. So obviously we left Serana there and then did the whole Meridia thing, and then it was back to Riften. So it was on the return to Riften. We basically told Isran what happened, and he yelled at us and got mad about some things. And then
which he's prone to do.
And then I had to start thinking about, what I've had to spend a lot of time thinking about what's the relationship between these characters. And I feel like when it was just Raiden and Goldir together, they were fine. But when Serana got introduced into the mix, then things weren't fine. And the reason that they weren't fine is because Raiden comes from this background where he's been raised in this culture that says your role is to destroy the undead if they threaten our people, right? So given that, he's coming from a point of view about, killing the undead that's basically, this is kind of a role that I fill in society. Whereas Goldir is coming at killing the undead because the undead in part are responsible for ruining his life and destroying his family, and he's got a big beef and he's got a vendetta.
Right.
Right.
So yeah, I mean it's a really both really interesting ways and different views.
Right.
One's a lot more pragmatic.
Right.
Yeah, because it's just kind of a job, not because it's revenge.
Yeah, and it's not,
right?
Part of your job isn't to eliminate every single one.
Right.
Just the problems.
That's correct. So when Serana shows up and she's actually talking to you nice and seems reasonable, Raiden is willing to listen to her, and Goldir is not. He's like, this is a vampire, we should kill her. And Raiden is saying, no, we're not going to kill her, and listen to me, because I saved your family, and by the way, if we get into it, I'll kick your ass. That kind of a thing, right? I think of them at that stage as sort of acting like brothers in a way, where they don't have any problems with threatening each other with a beatdown, over something they disagree on, right?
Yep.
So then it got to the point where, okay, well, now that all this has happened with Serana and they're back talking to Isran, I wanted to try and emphasize the fact that Goldir was really taking a hard line on this whole thing, and he was approaching it differently than Raiden. So I outfitted Goldir in the full Dawn Guard outfit with the exception of the hood. He still wears the hood, which kind of, I think pairs him up still puts him kind of visually, at least firmly in the camp of Raiden. They're still traveling together, working together. And then, of course, the mission was to go out and gather up a couple of resources for the Dawn Guard, a couple of people who they could bring back and would help them fortify the place and all that stuff. So they did all that business, and after completing that, you go back to visit Isran again, and then Serana's there waiting for you, and she says, "Hey, I want to talk to you about this Elder Scroll business. We need to sort this out." And it turns into kind of a big tiff, right, where Isran is really threatened by her and wants to kill her, and he's looking for you to give him a reason not to, and so you have to kind of talk him down, right? But as I see it, then at that point the game sort of forces you into this position where you have to travel with Serana again. And so I'm kind of taking this in stages, right? So now the three of them are traveling together again, but now this time Goldir is in full Dawn Guard garb, which to me psychologically is telling me as I play the game that Goldir is more firmly in the Dawn Guard camp now. He's
probably a good indication.
Yeah, he's coming down on the side of Isran in this deal, right?
Right.
And then it also kind of creates this rift between Raiden and Isran, who are both Red Guards, and Raiden originally was looking at Isran as a person to look up to, thinking they would share something because of their common culture. But what he realizes is that Isran has been away from Red Guard culture so long that they have almost nothing in common.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Right? So this kind of thing happens again, right, where they've got to go out and they've got to do a whole bunch of stuff. You can kind of see in the playthrough, there are areas where I kind of skip past some stuff, but there's a lot of different things that happen. They clear out a number of different barrows and stuff like that. What does he need?
Piece of paper.
Clear out a number of different barrows along the way, and there's a lot of detail I'm missing here, but thankfully it's all in 14 episodes if you want to watch it.
14 30-minute chunks, or
no. I think
only
10-minute chunks.
I think I have one episode that's below that. But I think the most monumental thing is I found the transition. There's a transition point here into basically what I'm calling Dark Raiden, which is I was looking for, as I kind of was in this level 20 range, for something that would be a transition point for him. And so after they found Gunmar and they found Serene, who were the two people they were sent to find and bring back to the Dawn Guard, they sent them back to Fort Dawn Guard, and then he and Goldir traveled back to Riften by way of Markarth. And one of the first things that happened is we walked in the door and someone there said, "Hey, there's a really good smith in Understone Keep. If you want to go and visit him, he can help you upgrade your weapons or get you some new armor." And so, following their advice, we went in there, and the first thing we encounter, of course, is a priest of Arkay, who we know that Raiden has an affinity for, having an argument with one of the Silverbloods about why they can't get into the into the Hall of the Dead, because they want to go in there and honor their ancestors. Mm-hmm. It's basically like someone locking you out of the cemetery and saying you can't go bring flowers, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, he's going to be like, well, what's going on with this situation? So talk to the priest, and he kind of tells us that, well, somebody's in there desecrating the dead. Someone's in there eating the dead. And so, of course, he's like, well, we better check this out. And so basically what happens is we go in there and have the whole encounter with Aola, where she basically tries to tell us that we have the same hunger that she does. and that if we want to explore this more, that we can meet her at this certain location.
I haven't noticed being hungry in that way before.
So at this point, this is where I think in the story I'm trying to emphasize shock value, because he comes from a culture where they honor the dead in many, many different ways.
But they don't eat them.
Yeah, they have. I mean, they have
not
some.
one of the ways they thought about.
Yeah, right. They maybe a lick, but never a bite.
Not ever a full-on kind of a meal.
No, right? So
this is so wrong.
He goes there and he encounters her, and it's funny how this quest is put together. You've got a couple of different options, but the quest really, really tries hard to steer you into this idea that you're going to eat the dead and you're going to get this ring of Namira.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I decided, I mean, there's no effing way he would ever do that, right? And so the way I approached it was, Iola says that there is basically a coven of people who are all engaged in the same activity. So the way that I approached it was that he wanted to identify who all of these people were. And so he was going to play along until he could figure out who everyone was, and then he was going to decide what to do about it. And, desecrating the dead is one thing, but eating them is kind of like the ultimate desecration of the dead.
I can't cross that line,
right? So because I'm thinking, he's probably been, he's basically been schooled as to be an undertaker. He knows how to prepare the bodies of the dead for burial.
I mean, take their stuff is one thing, but I mean, let's leave the canoptic jars.
Right. It's not a pickle jar. It's
that's a liver. Come on. Just
it's like pickled eggs. Like oh my God. So
this is an excellent vintage.
I just thought that that would be like, for him, really, really shocking. The idea that this is going on. So basically what I ended up doing is going there. I helped Iola go through the whole place and clear it out of Draugr. And she said, okay, the place is clear. Now we need to set the table for the feast. And what you need to do is go back to Markarth, and you need to grab that priest and convince him to come back here. And then we're going to feast on his flesh. And I was like, and I basically, the way I played it was I played it straight with her, and I'm like, sounds like a great idea. Right?
Let's do that.
So went back to Markarth, and I kind of role-played it basically to say to this priest, I was saying to the priest, this is the shit that's going on, and in order to uncover it, you're going to have to take a risk, and you're going to have to be the bait. If you're willing to be the bait, there's some evil here that we can do away with together. And if you're willing to do it with me, I'll also make a substantial tithe to the house of the dead. And he said, okay. That's how I couched that whole thing.
Right.
The way that the quest wants you to do it by default is they want to make it feel like you're tricking the priest into coming. So I couched it as though he basically spilled the beans of the entire plot to the priest and got him to come along and play along with this so that they could uncover the evil. Because that's what that priest would want to do, I think.
I think that's a great tip, because I think this is a quest line that gives a lot of people trouble just because of its nature.
But
and there really
sort of turn it on its head the way that he did.
Yeah,
it's more. This is a horrible word, palatable.
In game, there aren't many options in game, but if you can kind of go beyond those.
Yeah,
but that's what I mean. Because you can role play that, and you can turn it around to your advantage and actually sort of take the high road. And not stoop down to what the game wants you to do in that case. Now you've actually retold the story in the way that your character wants.
Right.
The interesting thing is that I discovered that the quest line would actually let me do what I wanted to do. Okay. And there are at least 2 mods out there that have been created that allow you to play through this scenario differently.
Right.
But what I discovered is that the actual quest line itself is flexible enough that you can do something else without having to resort to using a mod. That is, of course, if you're willing to forego the Ring of Namira.
Oh, sure.
I mean, the only way that you're going to get the ring is to complete this. Right.
What does complete mean?
Well, what it means is that you bring the priest back. She puts some kind of a spell on him. He lays down on a table, and you execute him, and all the people in the room eat his flesh. They basically serve him up for dinner.
So you're the bait, but unfortunately, sometimes the bait gets eaten.
Yeah.
Okay.
What I did is I brought him in with this pretext that we were gonna foil this plot together. And then when he gets to the point where he's laying on the table and she calls me over and says, okay, you need to kill him now, and then we're going to feast on his flesh.
Oops.
I turned the sword on her and I decapitated her.
Nice.
And then everybody in the room erupted. Now, the cool thing that happened here is this is the point at which, Raiden still has an army of souls inside him from the special power,
I remember you telling
right?
me about this.
Which is really cool. When somebody near him dies violently, their soul is incorporated into him for a period of time, and then he will project those souls out as warriors that will fight for him.
Wow.
And it's awesome,
Very
right?
cool.
And so what happens is if you go back and watch that, it's only a 24-minute long episode where I just try to put this in a capsule, right? But he decapitates Aola. She falls to the floor, blood spraying, and then immediately her soul erupts from his body, and she pulls out her sword and goes after her own people, which was
awesome.
so awesome,
That is
right?
so cool.
And then Raiden turned, and Goldir turned, and then it was a slaughter
Just
at that
chaos.
point. Raiden, Aola cut down a mage on one side of the table, and then Raiden went down and cut down a mage on the other side of the table, and then he killed a lady standing next to the table who owned. She was the one who owned the trading shop in Markarth.
Okay, yep.
He killed her, and then there was a stable boy and a butcher who were also part of this coven.
Right.
When the stable boy was fighting, but when he saw Raiden cut her down, he freaked out and tried to make a run for it. And Raiden chased him down and caught him right at the door as he was about to exit and broke his neck. Oh,
Nice.
and then everyone was dead except for the butcher, and the butcher was standing up by the
survivors.
table, and he's got a piece of bread in his hand, and then he slowly turns around and he just sits back down in his chair and starts eating his bread, and he looks around and he said, "What a mess, huh?" Something to that effect. And Raiden walked up to him and just cut his throat and killed him.
Oh.
And
where are you gonna find the bloodiest beef in the Reach now?
well, someone else is going to have to take over his stand now.
I got some mammoth I can sell you.
Well, they're probably hurting for meat there.
Yeah, now they
It
are.
will be.
So
Won't have the
essentially,
same taste to it, but
that was a huge turning point for me, and that was the point at which I changed a lot of things about his character. I stripped away his power from him, because at that point I said, okay, he's dishonored himself. He's taken care of this terrible thing, which was an honorable thing, but he did it by killing two people in cold blood.
right.
One guy was fleeing and the other guy was unarmed.
Right.
And so for me, I thought, this is perfect. This is a great turning point for the character, and it's exactly the kind of thing that I'm always looking for.
Yeah, cool.
in a
Can I
story.
ask which one that was?
Which
Which
what was?
episode that was?
I don't know. Whichever one was 24 minutes long.
That's not going to be possible.
I don't know. So
Oh.
anyway,
Undead Slayer?
they're all Undead Slayer.
No. It was just not showing up there. 'cause
Yeah,
there's
that-
one 24 minutes.
Yeah,
and
that
7
one right
seconds.
there. Whatever that one is.
Okay.
So anyways, that was kind of a major turning point. So at that point, what I did is I stripped him of a number of things. I took away his ritual stone power and just traded it out for the warrior
And
guardian stone.
The ritual stone was the one that allowed you to take in the souls.
Yes. And what I'm saying here is I'm saying that because of the way he did this, whatever ritual was performed on him as a child growing up that allowed him to capture and use the souls of the dead to fight the undead, I'm saying that power was stripped away from him by whatever entity gave him the power because he dishonored himself.
Okay.
And so at this point, he doesn't know if that power will ever come back to him.
If it's a permanent or
He doesn't know if it's permanent, if it's temporary.
or if maybe he's got some kind of trial to reprove himself.
Right. And so at that point, he basically shed all of his Ashaba warrior's garb. He stopped using that sword. He went to different gear that's darker, and now he's using a completely different sword that is not as powerful as the one he'd used previously. And he doesn't have his own private army,
Right.
following him around. So he's much more susceptible to being defeated or injured now than he was. In other words, things are much more difficult for him now from a combat perspective than they were before. And so it adds additional challenge, but that challenge is all couched in this idea that he's had this huge turnaround and that he's dishonored himself, and
That's
now
so cool.
he's got to figure out how
I'm kind of looking for a good turning point
Right.
for my character as well. I don't think I've quite hit it. I've hit a couple interesting points.
Right.
The lighthouse being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Playing in, I think it's Wind Peak when
Sure.
the bard joined him, because I didn't actually ask her to play with me through the mod. She just kind of came over and started.
Nice.
Joined
So
in.
that was kind of fun.
Cool.
But I haven't really hit a big pinnacle moment quite
Right.
yet. So
She knew that you were about to be the biggest provider of mammoth meat in Skyrim. So
Well,
she knew what she was getting into.
that's obvious, man.
So sometimes you got to call out the obvious on this show, Joe.
It's just called Man Meat Industries.
Man hyphen.
Yeah.
Right,
exactly.
right. Yeah,
So,
it's all about grammar and punctuation.
yeah.
So
So,
critical.
essentially what's happening now is his world is falling apart a little bit
At
because
least, yeah, as he knows it.
yeah, and he feels like he's shamed himself, like he's dishonored himself. He's been stripped of power, so he knows he's done something wrong. And Goldir is constantly putting pressure on him to say, why are we traveling with this vampire? Why are we not killing her?
Right.
Why are you doing this, right? And so I'm kind of playing it out as though their personal relationship is starting to suffer as well.
Oh, sure.
Because now Goldir has seen what Raiden is capable of when he's angry.
Right.
And he's wondering, why is this vampire not making you angry when these others are, or
Right.
stuff like
Why
that.
aren't you using that?
So the questions are coming.
Right.
And there have also been 2 other occasions where we've run into you can run into random vampires on the road who are just fleeing. They're trying to run away. They don't attack you. You'll find them just running down the road as if they're trying to escape from Vigilance of Stendar and stuff like that.
Sure.
And when he encounters those vampires, he lets them go
Right. Okay.
because he's got a different mindset. They're
Yep.
not a threat,
when they become a threat, then
Yeah.
he takes care of it.
Yeah, the
solve
time
that
to take
problem.
action against the undead is when they're a threat.
Yep.
Otherwise, all you're doing is dishonoring their dead bodies, which
Right.
makes it's a taboo.
Well, yeah, and I guess in
Right?
some respects too, if you were not to do that, if you were just to blindly attack,
Yeah.
I mean, you could justify that because they're going to do something, but
Right.
then you start getting into that preemptive mindset, which can be a really slippery slope.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So what I've been kind of trying to do here is saying that he exhibits his frustration over this situation by being more aggressive in his fighting style.
Mhm.
Okay.
So when he is fighting, he's much more aggressive, and which has worked out really well.
Is it contained only when he's fighting, though? I mean, is that going to spill over into his everyday?
No, I think it does spill over into his everyday, but a lot of that story is going on inside my brain as I'm playing. It's not necessarily exhibited in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm recording episodes of the Let's Play, I'm trying to walk viewers through what's going on in my head as I'm kind of working through these issues. But essentially, what's happening now is we're at this point where he's making yet another trip. They basically, the 3 of them had to travel together to find the Moth Priest. They found this priest. They freed him. The battle was amazing. Raiden's performance
I
in that
bet.
battle blew me away because, like, I strung together, I think, three separate charging power attacks
Oh, nice.
and mowed through every vampire in that room practically. It was
Dang.
amazing.
Well,
When you nail those, it's amazing.
I think it's really cool that you got a decapitation on the Aeola.
Yeah, I mean that was
that's
pretty epic.
What great timing.
Yeah. So it's interesting because when you get into this crypt where the Moth Priest is being held prisoner, essentially my thought was, I've got 2 followers with me. I'm going to make a straight beeline for the prisoner. He is our objective. I'm going to cut down anybody that gets in my path, but I'm going to leave all the others for my followers to mop up, right? And so I was basically in charge mode. I had to, get in there as quick as I could.
Right.
So it was kind of amazing how it worked out, because it was charging power attack and the Death Hound goes down and then he charges right in the front door and I see the archer, and as I get close enough to him that I can tell the timing is right, I go into the sprint and just perfect hit the
Nice.
charging power attack, cut him down in a swipe.
Perfect.
Right up the stairs, and there's one right on me. Bang! One just a block and a slice down, and then right at the master vampire, 2 more vampires down, and it was
Wow.
it was over like that.
That's hard timing to get though.
Yeah, and what's amazing about it is it's I'm using the Wildcat combat overhaul and playing at legendary difficulty.
Which makes it that much harder.
Yeah, which is so amazing. I mean, the timing is everything on when you do that.
Yeah, and when
So
you
it was
miss
so
it
much
though,
fun.
you really get
Yeah,
you get nailed hard if you miss it too.
exactly, and that's what I love about this character.
Right.
I've got an episode in this chain here that I released last week. That's probably about an hour long, where Raiden dies at least twice I can think of, and I have to replay through some stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's a testament to how difficult it really is.
Yeah.
And I've got an interlude in there where it says 4 attempts later, so you
Yeah.
can see that it
So
took me
it's-
6 attempts to get it.
Yeah, it's not just the 2 on that you kept,
Captured.
but
Right. But what it does is I think what it does is he's supposed to be an Ashaba warrior. He's supposed to be a sword singer. And when you hit it right, it really makes you
Right.
feel like you're an epic swordsman. Like
Oh,
you
yeah.
really are doing what you're supposed to be
way
doing.
cool.
So essentially rescued the Moth Priest, and now they've made the return trip back to Fort Dawnguard, and he's about to go in and talk to Isran again and get the scoop on where 2 more Elder Scrolls are that he's got to find. Now, for me, the next stage is, how do I characterize the difficulty, that's going on between these 3? And what I've decided is that the next step is that Goldir is going to abandon him. Goldir is basically going to say, I'm done with you. I can't do this anymore. I'm staying at Fort Dawnguard. I'm going to work with Isran. He'll send me on different missions where the objectives are clear and everybody I'm working with agrees with me.
Right.
So Goldir is going to basically say to Raiden, I'm done with you.
Yeah, so he pretty much prefers that more black and white.
Right. Right.
He doesn't want sort of the
Attitude.
emotional.
Yep.
Right.
You don't have to make a decision as to whether
Right.
you need to do this. You have to do this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Raiden is going to be looking at Serana, who's saying, we have to go to Castle Volkihar and find this other scroll. And he's basically going to say to her, you know what? I'm going to hold off on that. I need a break from both of you fuckers right now. He's basically going to say, I need a break from
Right.
you. Go there. I'll meet you there. I'm going to pursue the 2nd scroll on my own, and I'll meet you for the 3rd one. And so I think what we're going to have, I'm trying to represent the conflict between the 3 characters with this idea that they're going to separate from one another. And so I think between now episode 4 of this podcast and episode 5, the Let's Play is going to be a lot of solo adventuring
Okay.
with him. And I've nailed down the player home that meshes perfectly in with the story. So I think it's going to
Cool.
be... It's going to be great. I'm really looking
deal.
forward to it. So I'm going to start recording those Tuesday night. Start
Awesome.
cranking them
Neat.
out later this week. So
Very nice.
that's where I am. That's
All right.
basically it. The main thing that happened was that transition. That was the most important thing, I think,
Cool.
in this one.
Well, that was a much better stated update than mine was, but
Well,
Not nearly as humorous.
no, I tell you what, though. When suddenly I found it was my turn, I just drew a complete blank. Like, what the fuck did I just do for the last 2
Yeah,
weeks?
But
I
he's
can't-
got Van Meat Industries.
Go.
So
That's true. Yeah. Van
And
meat,
who doesn't
man
want
meat,
that?
whatever. Yeah.
everyone needs a little Van.
Van the
Yeah.
man's meat.
Everyone wants a little van.
That's right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the character craft part of the show. We are going to take a little bit of a break now, and then we are going to come back and we are going to read your questions. We're going to answer those questions as best as we can in our community craft portion of the show. Thank you very much, and we will be back shortly. Inspired by the long tradition of Nord brewing, Draugr Lager brings to you the authentic wallop of days gone by. Draugr Lager is crafted for real warriors and is not intended for gormless, honey-drinking arsemongers. Bring back the bold, musty flavors of the Merithic era with any of our line of ancient Nordic lagers. Made with only the finest and really super extremely old ingredients, Draugr Lager will satisfy even the dustiest of palates. Draugr Lager, the great taste of the undead, with no bitter afterlife. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, everybody, to Community Craft. This is the portion of the program where we read mail that has come in from you all with questions about role play, quandaries about your stories. We address these questions and do our best to answer them for you, provide you with little bits of advice, such as it is. If you have questions that you would like to submit, we invite you to do that. You can do it at any time by going to our web submission form for Unbound, which can be found at unbound.charactercrusade.com. Correct. All right. So tonight we've got about 5 or 6 different questions. Matt is going to read these questions, and Joe and I are going to do our best to try to answer them. Hopefully you'll get some satisfaction out of this. And then after this is over, after we're done with Community Craft, we're going to get into the homework segment. And I want to make sure we allow a little extra time for the homework this time. We've got some different things we want to address based on some discussions we had this week on Discord. I think this will be a helpful discussion to everyone involved for those of you who are feeling a little bit stuck in your role play. All right? So are we ready, Matt?
I'm so ready.
All right, fire at will.
Shall I read this big one or just the highlighted bit?
That would be
Probably just the highlighted.
up to you.
Yeah. I guess.
Well, there's a little bit of context that comes into it, right?
Well, go ahead. Go ahead. Paraphrase, I guess,
So
at your discretion.
who's it by first? We'll start out.
Der Metzger.
All right.
Character's name is Drakur.
Perfect.
Right, so role play question.
All righty.
Drakur is a young Khajiit female who is a free-spirited agent of Mara. She can sometimes be spotted skipping down the road, humming to herself. Her mission in life is to spread Mara's message of love and compassion. She helps out wherever she can, but avoids conflict. She is especially known for her empathy for those who have died in a violent way, and their spirits will often help her out of violent confrontations of her own. As a benefit of the Andromeda Ritual Stone.
Sounds familiar.
She is an accomplished hunter, which is a source of income, producing food and clothing. She is loved by those who meet her and is at peace with herself.
Wow.
That said, her family is happy with the fortune she has managed to amass through the goods she produces. No skooma.
Okay.
Her one vice is that she loves to sneak into giant camps and steal the loot from their chests. So,
Okay.
so a little innocent one, but
Get a
little rebellious streak perhaps there. Right?
Yeah.
Sure.
The question she grapples with is how can she meet the expectations of the ambitious crusader who rules the land? She's not a warrior and only occasionally uses a calm spell to avoid a fight. As such, she is still very young at heart. So before she goes and throws all of the songs she knows into the sea, can I get some advice on how to level up a pacifist character? I struggle to keep up with the minimum levels. Trainers only get you so far. Level 16. Her sneak, smithing, alchemy, and archery are high. She doesn't get any skill benefit when the helping spirits dispatch hostiles for her, but to be in character, she can't do it herself anyway. It's fun to wander around and explore, but it doesn't get you levels. Thanks for the project. I love following all the stories.
Awesome.
So, pacifist character.
Sure.
Not
Absolutely.
leveling up. Probably not gonna.
Well, obviously you're going to get some levels from doing your sneaking, doing your crafting, doing your lock picking.
Mm-hmm.
That'll take care of some stuff, but it only gets you so far.
Right,
Joe.
Right. If you have access to some of the enchantments we talked about earlier, those kind of things, those kind of items will help, such as training enchantment, that kind of thing.
The enlightenment
Right,
items.
right.
Right.
I don't know if you have any of the mods that offer those, but if you do, look for those. They can be a little spendy, but
Yep.
I don't know. I've actually purchased quite a few. I've purchased a lot more magic in this game of mine right now than I think I ever have.
Right.
Just because I thought it was it just happened at the right time.
Yeah.
So, and I happen to have the coin. So that's another way.
It is an interesting question, though,
Is to
because
leverage.
yeah, well, you have
what
a
you're
chance
doing.
to do that, leverage those things. I just look at it from the perspective of if you wanted to be the character who was in charge of others, right? So your followers had to always do your bidding, right? So you never got any blood on your hands.
Right. So I guess the first question I had, too, is the part about the Crusader. Where is it here?
It's halfway down through that little
Yeah,
bit
she
of microfiche
grapples
there.
with how she can meet expectations of the ambitious Crusader that rules the land. So what are those ambitions? What's expected?
That's very true.
I don't know.
So
we might need to get a little bit more detail on that, but
Yeah.
assume that it isn't going to fit with
Well-
an innocent person who doesn't really want to hurt people, right?
right.
Here's the thing I'm thinking too is that she's obviously going to pursue the Agent of Mara thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so
That'll bring you all over the place.
it will. And as you're growing into this power, there are other ways that you can simulate this power that will net you levels. And
Do tell.
what I would recommend is if you're not using it already, I'm guessing you probably are, Apocalypse Spell Package, and grab yourself Okado's Recital,
Oh yeah.
and use Okado's Recital to program some restoration spells into your character using Okado's Recital that will kick off when you go into combat, and make them the kinds of spells that do things like, produce a circle of strength around your character, or cast Muffle on yourself, or cast armor on yourself from the alteration tree.
Right. Heal other,
What that'll
whatever,
do,
if you have followers.
yeah, exactly. Those spells, you can treat them as though they're passive abilities because they're being kicked off automatically by Okado's Recital. Treat them as if they're passive abilities that are given to you by Mara as you go out and spread her word and do her stuff,
That's
right?
a good idea.
But each time Okado's Recital kicks off those spells, you're casting those spells and you're gaining levels in those spell trees, whatever they are. So maybe pick an alteration spell and a restoration spell and an illusion spell or something like that, and find some combination of self-affecting type of spells that you could use to simulate this idea that she's being blessed by Mara. And that would allow you to go up levels in 3 different spell trees at the same time.
Alteration,
without
restoration, and illusion. Is that what you said?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
Those are
There
options,
are
yeah.
other ones that you can use too. I mean, you can use cloak spells from the destruction tree,
Sure.
stuff
With
like that.
Protection.
Yeah, I mean, all of that would work. And then if you throw in another one, if you throw in a mod like elemental magic, that will also give you the ability to use cloak spells that are earth-based and wind-based and water-based, which could also be you could build that
Oh,
into your
yeah.
mythos, right? Like, You know how Mara's tears, right? Mara's crying,
Yep.
right? What if you use that water one and make it a water cloak, like it's the cloak of Mara, right?
Right.
And it's surrounding your character, but it's giving you levels and destruction every time it kicks off.
Right.
To me, that would be a really cool one. And there's another one like that too. There's another spell that does a similar thing, but for conjured creatures.
Sure.
No.
So
You could.
I would explore that.
Maybe twist the combat against Draugr and undead type of characters as, not necessarily as much engaging in combat as putting them to rest.
Yes, that's a great one.
So
Right? What greater show of love, right, from
than to
Mara
give them eternal
is
rest,
to put them out of their misery, right?
because they're obviously
To set them
suffering.
free. That is a great idea, right?
So you got a lot of barrows and ruins covered right there.
That definitely gives you an impetus to go straight into these barrows and do things, right?
yeah.
The other thing you could
but
think
no
of,
Draugr means no Draugr lager.
that barrow's lost.
Yeah,
Lost
that's
Barrel
right,
Brewery.
Lost Barrel
No
Brewery.
one
Still
can
looking,
find
Never
it.
still
gonna
looking.
get there. All
No,
right.
no one knows how they ship that stuff out of there.
Smuggler's barrel.
The other thing that you could do is think about the Dwemer stuff. I mean, you can go through an entire Dwemer dungeon without killing anything living. All you're doing is disabling robots,
machines.
automatons. That would be another thing to consider too. That she shouldn't have any objection to that, and that would be about exploring and about getting down in there to maybe find items that can help her do good in the world, stuff like that. And these are maybe things that you've thought about already, but I think Okado's recital in particular could definitely, it's fun on a lot of different levels. Firstly, it's going to help you level, which is what you're looking for. But secondly, it's going to allow you to go through all those spells that are available and cherry pick some ones that you think would really kind of represent this power that's given to her by her god, which I think is cool.
So I think some of the difficulty here lies in this concept, this passive concept, and so I think one thing that maybe you need to try to look for is a angle that you can break this purely passive.
Well, because self-defense would be different than being an aggressor.
Right,
If
right.
someone's
I mean,
going to attack you, even a pacifist would look at a way to maybe.
I mean, you could
prevent
try
their
to. I mean, you
demise.
could spend the game as a farmer. You're not going to really level, but I mean, you might still enjoy
Mad
it. But
chickens, right?
it's looking for that angle that kind of breaks her free, or him. I guess it's really, was it a he or she? Doesn't really matter, I guess. But
She.
Young. 'cause
okay,
she's
she
female.
that maybe jars her to realize that a purely passive view of the world.
But there's, I mean,
Why
there's an advantage.
ideal isn't necessarily
No,
realistic.
but that's part of perhaps
growing.
growing a little bit.
Mhm.
I mean,
And
we
if she's
see that when
young.
you get to in some of Stu's story and your story where you hit a level and all of a sudden you have a bit of a catharsis, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go from being a pacifist to being an aggressor or a warrior, but you may realize that the world isn't as perfect as you thought it was, and you've accumulated all this knowledge.
And that
There
by
has to be
doing
a better
nothing,
way.
it's not going to help it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, okay. Jakar's making the comment that putting out of misery seems more like a Meridia thing than a Mara thing. I disagree with that, and I agree with it at the same time. I mean, I think it's a question of how you approach it, right? Meridia's impetus for taking out the undead is going to be, they're an abomination.
Right.
Let's put them
It's
out of their
not
misery,
necessarily
right?
out of passion.
Right. Whereas Mara's approaching this it's an act of love.
Right.
Okay, it's an act of love. It's an act of compassion. I think both of them are perfectly relevant. It's just a question of where does it come from? What's the
Right.
impetus, right? What is the driving factor? I'm very, very reluctant to rule out anything in this game purely because of something on the surface, right? I think that you can make the argument for a lot of approaches here. I think Mara in particular makes a lot of sense here. So yeah, I like that. Yeah, and I would fully expect that this is a person that needs to be able to. They need to be able to defend themselves. We all understand that the roads of Skyrim are extremely dangerous. You get attacked every 20 feet. So
Followers,
especially on Legendary, I'm sure.
Right. And I am sure that this character realizes that. I'm sure we're preaching to the choir here.
right?
But when you're primarily focusing on things like calm spells and stuff like that to try to calm these enemies and then move on.
Right.
I mean, I think that's a fantastic strategy.
And it can work in most cases.
Mm-hmm. I think
Nothing to
another
see, move along.
another option is
Right.
paralysis.
Yeah.
You know, paralyzing them for as long as it takes you to get away. So
Sure.
get some levels going in alchemy and do paralysis potions, and don't even call them paralysis potions. You know, call them something to do with your Mara mythos.
Right.
It's not a paralysis potion. It's the touch of Mara. Boom, and it act like it puts them to sleep.
Instant Zen.
Right?
Instant Zen.
Yeah, yeah. Liquid Zen
And Zen.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So, I think that what you got to do is look at all this stuff and find a new way to view it, right?
Yeah.
Just
to make
'cause,
sense
you know,
of what otherwise.
Yeah.
Without
be
turning
brutal.
into a rebellious teenager, you can still follow that line,
Yeah.
continue
Right,
along
right.
the pacifist
I think
approach.
this sounds like
Yeah.
a really high level speech tree type of character
Mhm.
to me.
Oh yeah, probably talk your way out of conflicts with thieves and bandits.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Yep.
times there's a persuade option. I think that
Yep.
would be totally fitting, and that's going to just
Yep.
increase your speech abilities, which
Yep.
increases your level.
I love this concept personally. I think it's really
another
cool.
thought is if you don't have Sky Tweak, which allows you to tweak a lot of like almost all the settings, consider throwing that into your load order and bump up your ability to level in a certain thing like speech.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, I mean, it's you're here to play to have fun and to progress a certain style of play. I don't necessarily personally have a problem if you want to give yourself a bump in something that lends itself to that role play.
Right. This is part of the story. We don't know the backstory.
I mean, you're not gonna like triple it or anything, but you know, a 5% or less
Mhm.
boost isn't gonna break the bank, but it's gonna give you just a little bit of edge. So every time that hits that level, there are the leveling abilities. It's just gonna help you go a little bit further.
Could be a
Yeah.
speechcraft savant.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean,
absolutely.
call it what you will. Some purists will call it cheating.
Yeah.
I call it role
Yeah.
play.
You know what I like
Purists.
what I like about this too is that the Apocalypse spell package gives you a number of different options here too, because there are some fantastic spells in the illusion tree that allow you to do things like take damage from someone who's attacking you and reflect it back on them doubled. Those kinds of
Oh.
things.
Oh, right.
Or and maybe invest really heavily in your character and health, so you have all this health, right? And like allow them to attack you with open arms. Obviously, use your spell abilities to protect yourself as much as possible, but take the pain that they're inflicting on you and redistribute
Right.
it, right? And so then you almost got this feeling going on, like you're this person out there who's saying, give me your pain,
Right.
give me your outrage, give me your pain, give me your anger, but you're taking that and channeling it into protecting yourself, which I think is really fucking cool.
That is cool.
Honestly.
That is cool.
I love that.
Precarious way of dealing with stuff sometimes, but
Yeah, but if you get good at it, if you
Yeah.
figure it out, and especially if you're using Okado's recital, right?
yeah, and it
and-
just kicks off.
You go into combat, and Okado's kicks off, and what it does is first it hits you with magical armor, so you're protecting yourself, and it does some other things. Now, there's a limitation on what Okado can do. It can't do stuff that's targeted. It can't do stuff that's offensive.
Right.
All right?
Right.
So
Which seems about right.
yeah, so
Perfect.
what you do is you use that for spells that you can cast on yourself that will allow you some extra protection, and
Sure.
then you focus your abilities on taking that aggression and channeling it,
Sure.
which I think is super cool concept. I love that idea a lot.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
I hope we're going to get a follow-up from
That
the submitter on how these turn out.
Yeah.
it reminds me of a book that I cannot remember. It was a long, long time ago. But in it, there was a group of monks whose purpose was because they believed there was a finite amount of suffering. So the more suffering they took, the less in the world there was.
Wow.
So they went around just looking to be hurt. That was their
There's
whole
nothing
thing.
like looking for trouble, but for a totally different reason.
Yeah, and they did it to free the world because the more pain they suffered, the less pain there was in the world. So it's kind of a spin on that, maybe not quite so drastic, but
It's a pretty cool way to do it.
I love it.
it's a really interesting take.
I
You
think
can
it's fantastic.
call it Mara's whatever you want, but it would be kind of a that's a cool idea.
Yeah, I mean,
Mara's
you know,
reflection.
you've got
There
all
you
this
go.
this stuff, right? You know, just build your own mythos around it. Use Okado's recital. Get creative with the spells. Find a way to build it into your story. I just think there's lots and lots and lots of opportunity there.
All right.
All
That was
right.
a good one.
Yeah, that was a good one. Ooh, I like it.
Nice.
Good start.
Thank you. All right. The next one is from Katie Bryson. Character is Nip. So Nip is only at level 7, but she's already located her nemesis
Okay.
on Dolamar.
Okay.
Okay. There is a quest to be his buddy and thus enabling her to get close to him, but it's too short. What are some other quests Nip could do as favors to the Thalmor to gain their complete trust?
Oh boy.
Yeah, on Dolamar, he is kind of like one of those head Thalmor guys. He's the one who's hanging out in Markarth. He hangs out in the palace in Markarth where the Jarl is there, and he's got his little contingent of soldiers that hang out with him.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you can do a quest for him that kind of makes him sort of like an ally, but it is quite short. Now that actually comes back to help you though later on. If you do that quest and then you become the Dragonborn, he will be there at the embassy when you do the infiltration of the embassy, and he will actually help you inside the embassy.
Okay.
To create a diversion?
Yeah, to basically help you. You can have him do the diversion for you instead of the drunk guy,
Oh,
which is kind of a cool thing.
I didn't know
I
that.
thought about that.
Yeah.
I always thought it had to be the drunk guy.
I kind of like the
well, the drunk guy
but-
is fantastic.
God, he's hilarious.
Behold my handiwork. I love him. He's the best.
Oh, I haven't
Have
done
another
that.
meeting
Oh,
today.
there's so many. There's so
Yeah.
many of these I have not done for so long.
You've come to the right. You know, he's like, "What? You want a seed? Oh, you've come to the right place. Behold my handiwork." He's the best.
Fantastic.
Yeah. What I love is that all the beggars are voiced by him. Like all the male beggars are
Oh, are they?
voiced by
Oh,
him.
he's got a
Okay.
pretty good variety then.
Yeah. So the one you run into Markarth, when
Oh, yeah.
he gets really mad
He's
when you won't give
surly.
him money. He's like,
Yeah.
"You backbiter!"
Yeah,
He's like,
yeah.
"Give me money!" Ah, you know,
He
just-
does. Yeah, he
he
gets
goes
a little
off.
totally belligerent.
Yeah. Well, so the question is, what other things could Katie do to kind of simulate shoring up this relationship with
the
Ondolamar?
Thalmor. Well, yeah, with the Thalmor in general, right?
I wish I were a little more versed in that particular quest. So what are some
Well, I think what we're
Other-
doing here is we're just looking at opportunities to, kind of look around at other things going on in Skyrim that maybe aren't necessarily attributed to the
Right.
Thalmor, but that we could connect with them
connect on
somehow.
them? Right.
Certainly, for example, I mean, I made up a whole bunch of shit when I did the passage associated with the Thalmor
No way.
wanting him to,
Right.
go out and deal with the Forsworn.
Right. For for a much different reason. But,
Sure.
I mean, it depends on, I guess, what kind of relationship is the character looking for with the Thalmor?
Mhm.
Just a working or to actually ingratiate themselves
Right.
Yeah.
because
Longer lasting.
they they believe in that line of thought.
Mhm.
And then maybe betray them later. that kind of
not.
thing.
Maybe
knows?
or not.
Or not,
Right.
right?
I mean, is there a way to ingratiate yourself to the Thalmor in a way that makes it possible for you to continue with the rest of the game without sort of having to get back at the Thalmor?
Yeah, I mean the Thalmor are kind of, in a way, they're kind of like this evil force that is around Skyrim, but they're sort of separate from everything, right?
I was going to say they're kind of on the periphery, but
yeah,
is there an advantage in being good in their eyes, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that you could look around at a whole host of different side quests and locations and things like that, things that are going on in Skyrim, and you could say that Undolamar or someone like him had sent you to go and do those things.
Right. So, yeah, even if it's a different Thalmor agent, it could be, in your head.
Right.
You could play it off as this is an agent working on his behalf that you're answering to.
Right. I mean, what if okay, so she's at level 7. One of the things that we know is as soon as you hit level 10, you're going to get that letter from Zidgear where he's going to say, "Hey, come on down to Falkreath and kill some people for me. That'd be fantastic."
Yeah.
It happens always
Does he have a strand
at
of
level
wheat in
10.
his teeth too? Just wondering.
But there's no reason that you couldn't say something like that. Undolamar comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm putting in a good word for you with the,
Well, yeah,
with the
that would
such and so
actually
in
make a lot more
Falkreath."
freaking sense than this Jarl coming out of the blue.
Yeah,
saying,
like
"They've heard of you?"
who told the Jarl about you and your exploits? Well,
It had
maybe
to have
that
been
was Undolamar,
somebody.
right?
Yeah.
Right? And just look for
So-
stuff like that.
Is Falkreath, refresh my memory, is Falkreath sympathetic to the Imperials then?
I believe it is.
So then it would make a lot more sense
yeah.
if you went that direction.
Right.
But I mean, even so, I guess you could still
Uh-huh.
play that off a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would look for quests that are, things that you would expect,
Right.
but then try to turn them on their heads a little bit, or say, is this something that could be attributed to some involvement by Undolamar?
Yeah, even if indirectly.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, it could be indirect. But if Undolamar is the focus, I mean, that should mean that you're spending an awful lot of time in Markarth, or going back and forth between places in Markarth,
Right.
to kind of touch base with him,
Right.
or going to Solitude, and going to you can go to the Thalmor headquarters in Solitude as well, and say, "Hey, I got some orders there."
Right.
I think there are also characters that are high elves in the game who aren't necessarily associated with the Thalmor, but that you could say were agents of the Thalmor.
Right.
So the two sisters who run Radiant Raiment, for example.
Oh, yeah.
You could say they were somehow Thalmor agents who were running a shop there and kind of keeping an eye on things.
Right.
Runil is a
Runil.
priest of Arkay and Falkreath. He could be the Thalmor eyes and ears in Falkreath, for example. Stuff like that. And honestly, I mean, they don't have to be high elves. I mean, the Thalmor's tendrils extend into everything.
Right.
but
I mean, if they are
still.
high elves, it gives you just more of that direct path. But if they're
Right.
not, they could still be sympathetic.
Right. And,
So-
it's interesting, but if you look at it, a lot of the Jarls and stuff like that, a lot of the Jarl's stewards, there's more than one Jarl that has a steward that is a high elf as well. That is the case in Falkreath.
Okay.
It is also the case in Riften.
Is it?
Okay. And the steward in Riften, she's got a special quest attached to her where you can kind of investigate her and discover that she is kind of up to no good. She's having an affair with someone else in the court. She's doing all these things, and you can blackmail her.
Oh.
There's different things like that. So
How long does it take playing before you find something like that?
6
out?
years.
6
Okay.
years.
6 years. Yep. 6 years. So,
When
yeah, there's a
it
lot of
came
stuff.
out in 2011, so
Yeah,
6 years.
7 years. actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
7 years.
All right. Yeah. So, Yeah, that's what I would do.
Yeah,
I
look
would just
for
at
these
that stuff.
interesting side characters and spin off of maybe some of their dialogue or their town or city affiliation or whatever, and just see how you can tie it back and make something up if you can't. That
Have
always
fun
works.
with that, Katie.
Yep.
Make it up.
Make it up. That's the way it goes around here.
Yep.
All right, we're going to move on from nip.
All
Just
right.
had to say
To
nip.
tuck.
Just say
Nip.
nip one more
To
time.
tuck.
Tuck. Very close. We're going to Teague.
Oh, that is close.
It
Morgan Teague. Thank you very much. Coming from Packet Loss.
All right.
Have you ever stayed on track with the character you envisioned or outlined at the beginning of this project?
No.
What has helped you in that endeavor? And what has been the biggest challenge? Okay, the answer is no for probably both of you. The answer is yes for me because I have played for 1 minute.
Well, it depends on what you.
I like your story arc, Matt.
Yeah,
It's
I guess it depends on.
It's an epic tale of stasis. That's so far where we are. It's great.
I guess
Oh,
it depends on what how you define that.
yeah.
But the thing is that we've said this in several of the questions and over the course of character storyline today. There has to be some development. So you start off with a character the way that you envision it. You have an idea of backstory. Great, I've got a reason for being here. I know that I'm angry or I'm a pacifist or whatever. If there isn't some evolution of that character throughout the story, then it probably isn't a growing story.
It becomes stale.
Mind.
And that's
after
why
you've
I was
gotten
so
to
quick
level
to say
20,
no.
Yeah.
Right.
Is, I come up with this concept and maybe tie in some backstory to it
Yeah.
and develop that. But then eventually it grows beyond that. It's still a part of the character.
Mhm.
You can still draw from it. But something inevitably will happen that steers you in a slightly different and unexpected way.
And I think that's part of the glory of story is that
Right.
without that choice for change, for growth, for improvement, or sometimes ruining it, you do something and you take a step back
Right.
emotionally or physically or whatever, and the story gets changed in a different direction because you
Right.
weren't expecting that thing to fail.
Now,
Right?
I guess in one sense of the question is, how do you stay on task?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that could be a part of it too.
You mean not
that-
accepting every quest that's handed
Yeah.
to you?
How do you interact with the game in a way that's still true to the character? Because sometimes
Right.
you just do that one thing because you always do that one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that this is something that we're going to talk about kind of
It's actually
quite a bit.
ties in
homework.
pretty well to later on.
Yeah, but I'll say for my part, right there's the idea of am I staying true to the story I want to tell versus am I staying true to the type of character that I initially planned to create.
Right.
My feeling is, when I come into the game for Unbound in particular, I come into it without an end goal in mind. I don't know how the story is going to end,
Right.
and that's part of the excitement
Which
for
is
me.
quite a bit different
So-
than a lot of your stories that you've created specifically for
Right.
a series.
Right, and that's what I like about this exercise. It allows me to
Just
go
play.
in with an open mind and
Right.
say, I want Skyrim to tell me the story, instead of using it as a framework for telling my story.
Right, right.
And so when I think about answering this question from a narrative standpoint, I'm thinking it doesn't matter because I don't have an end goal in mind. I'm just curious to see where the game leads me. However, I understand the frustration associated with trying to stay true to a character concept,
Right.
which is different than trying to stay true to, say, an idea that you have in your mind about how the story might end.
Oh, yeah.
So that is a question we are specifically going to tackle in the homework.
Right.
So I would say let's reserve the rest of that answer for the homework.
Lest you give away
Matt?
a homework spoiler.
Let's table this topic.
Let's table that topic right here.
We got to get Matt a gavel. Wouldn't that be great?
No, that would be a horrible idea.
No. All right. So
I don't want to
we're gonna-
give Matt any more power.
I know.
Well, you notice he didn't offer anything sharp. It has to be.
Well,
a
that's
gavel.
true.
I mean, look at him.
Right.
He's already drunk with it.
He's just gonna... Oh, God.
I mean, you gotta let him read the questions, and pretty soon,
That's right.
pretty soon, like he's editing them.
I was totally not editing. Read it.
I can't. It's too small.
That's
too small.
I didn't print the microfiche.
That's why I'm letting you read
It's
it.
only in my hand.
I didn't think printers could get that tiny.
Right?
Oh, they do.
This is like atomic level printing on rice size.
I actually have a
Those-
grain of
see?
rice with my name on it.
Do you really?
I do. It's from a former coworker.
Wow.
That's nuts. Did
No,
you eat
it's
it?
actually
It's
rice.
rice. Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
you guys
No.
are so fucking
I
clever.
know. It's
Packet
amazing.
Loss, thank you for the question.
We
on
will
Morgan.
get back to it soon.
That sounds like, thanks for asking a question in class. We're going to issue homework to everyone in class because you asked that question. Thank you very much. Everyone in class is going to beat you up now, Packet Loss.
No, they won't.
Curve wrecker.
Jerk, you got 100%. I got 11. All right. The next
I'm
question
safe.
is from Zephyr. I love that.
Zephyr.
Character's name is Baldric.
All right.
Baldric has thus far been dancing around the Civil War in his journey. If he eventually decides to join the fray, should I just take it as presented in the game, where the war doesn't progress until the player takes a side? Or would it make more sense to incorporate some events of the questline into the story beforehand to account for what would realistically be happening?
You know, that's actually a really good question. I've kind of been asking myself that a little bit recently because Van is not going to take sides. He avoids Stormcloak and Imperial encampments like the plague because he really doesn't want to get involved.
Right.
So this is actually kind of timely, and I don't have an answer, but it's I'm glad it's actually getting brought up because it's something I can probably incorporate or think about in my
But the
own play,
storyline
because
does need that choice to progress at some point.
It does. I mean, it's kind of out there, and people refer to it in game, but it doesn't really. Nothing occurs unless you have a Civil War type of mod installed, which I do not.
Yeah. Man, I guess, you know, the cool thing about the Civil War is it's one of those things that you can kind of start throwing in at any time if you feel like you're in a position where the primary story that you had going on in your head is stalling, and you need to
Something
you
to
need to
sort of juice it a bit.
yeah, you need to throw in some chaos or whatever. You need something. You know, you
it'll-
need an
it'll do
infusion
that.
of mayhem.
Yeah.
But you don't. You know what you can do is, and I've done this in Itis Dog's story, is that he's not directly addressing the Civil War, but I've added mods to the game that really intensify the presence of the Civil War.
Yeah, and those
And-
are great mods. They
And,
really
and
are.
a lot of them are just purely kind of superficial. They don't require you to kick off the Civil War quest line in order for them to
They
function.
just kind of throw in random battles.
Well, they just make things seem more militarized.
Right.
And what I would suggest doing is, you know, pick out some mods like that, and, you know, maybe every couple levels throw one of those in and just start building up, right? So, for example, immersive patrols,
That's a good one.
you throw that in, and now suddenly you've got patrols of Stormcloaks and Imperials ranging into areas in larger numbers than where
Yeah.
they didn't before.
They'll
Immersive patrols.
immersive patrol.
Patrols.
They will occasionally run into each other too, if I remember right.
And when they run into each other,
It's-
they fight to the death.
Oh God,
Sweet.
yeah, stay out of that fray.
It's bad.
I was just going to ask
It
whether
is.
there was a mod that would like quadruple the number of characters. It
Yeah,
sounds like
it's
There are
it is a little resource intensive just because of that.
yeah, it can be, but
Um,
it's fantastic.
It's a great mod if you can do it. Yeah.
Yep. There's another mod that I threw into Itis Dog's mod lineup that add all kinds of sort of Civil War related grim reminders of the war on the outskirts of the cities. So execution blocks
yeah.
and people being crucified, and like things that really intensify
Very
that.
dark.
Very dark.
Okay. Yep.
The other two mods there's additional three mods I've added in. One places right out in the middle of the tundra, not far from Whiterun, a huge fortified Imperial camp where it really looks like a large army would be present there. And there's a matching one for it for the Stormcloaks that's up in the mountains. Put those in. And then what was the other one I was going to mention? It adds in several locations around Skyrim. It just creates the aftermath of huge battles. So lots of dead bodies and weapons laying around. They are basically battlefields.
Battlefields. Okay.
And these are all things that you can add to your game that will really amp up the intensity of the conflict without
forcing your hand.
Without forcing your hand, and without dumping in some kind of a mod, one of these Civil War mods that just go bananas with that quest, right? You don't, because those are the ones that I really kind of worry about. I mean, some of the Civil War quest mods can get really intense.
Right.
But pick out some stuff like this that just enhances the ambience and throw them in every few levels. Throw one in, and your character will start to encounter these things, and you'll feel like, holy shit, man, things are getting worse and worse and worse by the day.
Right.
And then when you finally get to that point where you're ready to kick off the Civil War quest line, you jump in, and you've got all this story built up behind it. I mean, to me, that's cool, and it'll have a lower impact on your game than doing a giant Civil War overhaul.
Yeah, I know for me personally, there's no way I could put in a big heavy mod.
Oh, from a play experience standpoint, too
just from
intensive.
Just from a mechanical machine perspective, I can't handle it.
The Civil War overhaul mods, some of them add large numbers of soldiers in certain places. The battles get bigger,
right?
But there are others that are kind of cool too, in that they force you to complete certain stages of that quest much more quickly, right? Like it creates urgency. Like, we took this area, now we got to take the next area, otherwise they're going to bring their troops in and take it back.
Right.
And so, those have merit, but
so these are the ones you've mentioned are there's a couple in there I think I could probably stand to think about in the near future. Just to bring that more to the forefront, because it kind of is a point of contention in the game. I mean, it's mentioned all over the place, but you really don't see any of the effects. So,
when you first enter Skyrim, there's not much going on. You hear about the conflict a lot, but if you start throwing these things in, and now you're seeing the aftermath of battlefields, and you're seeing patrols, and you're seeing people being executed and pilloried, and all this stuff, like, then it really makes an impression.
I think we got a lot going on with the Civil War mods. Recommendations for building stuff into the storyline.
Yeah, if you can do that, I think there's some great value in it. If you can't, I guess throw that in kind of your headcanon, I suppose, and pick things that are in the game and make them a representation of. Yeah. I mean, I suppose we could go with dead horses.
Yeah.
What?
Dead horses could be an after effect of getting in the way of the Civil War. Who knows?
Yeah, we've talked about that in a past podcast. Let's we used all the dead horses you find in Skyrim. What can we do to build a story based on dead horses?
Because there's rarely, I shouldn't say never, but there's rarely a lot of explanation on why these horses are hanging around. You just come across.
You show up, and
there's a couple instances where you can make some assumptions, but nothing definitive. So,
and not with Van Meets coming around and harvesting horse.
No, I just stick to mammoth. I mean, I'm not saying
sort of a one-trick pony there. But.
Yeah. Well, the motto we came up with over the weekend was, when the game gives you dead horses, make glue.
Yes,
that's our
right.
New motto.
That's
Put
right.
that on a T-shirt.
Even just the hashtag make glue would be enough.
Yeah. It would, wouldn't it?
Nice.
What's next?
Our final question is from Trolliant. The character name is, hang on.
All right.
Nilindi Oakbrook. See, this is the problem with new glasses. Nilindi Oakbrook, don't get old. This is a pain.
Or just don't let your eyes get old.
Yeah, you've got cool new glasses, too.
I
So,
know.
I know, looking very sharp there, by the way. All right, now that most of our characters are pretty well established, and this actually harkens back to something we were talking about a few minutes ago. I have a question about the overall story arc for our characters. Do you prefer to let the game direct where your story goes, or do you direct the game where you want your story to go? Related to this, do you think it's important to have an end goal in mind for your character, or do you just let the situations that arise in game direct where your character will go? So this is the difference between Stu starting a game because he has a story to tell, and in this case, letting the story
Right.
direct where his character will.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we are circling back a little bit, but for me,
A little bit.
it's
Have a look at
always
this
been
again.
how does my character develop through sort of the mechanics of the game, right? I rarely choose the same things for the characters in different playthroughs. How can I explore where my character will grow to? Because I don't know a lot of the lore, I can't create as complex a backstory. So I have to let the story sort of direct the game a bit, but that's just me.
To quote El Dorado, both. Both is good.
Both is good.
I think you need to both let the game give you some direction, but also have an idea of where you want to go.
Sure.
So the game will help you get there, but if you don't have at least a rough outline, it makes it really hard to connect all these things that are in the game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think
That was profound.
insofar as having an end goal, I guess that's up to you. But in this particular exercise, it's not necessary. No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think I like the idea of having like a larger umbrella framework that you work loosely inside of with an open mind and let the game steer you inside of it. And if that the game steering you around changes your concept completely for what that umbrella should be,
It might.
That's awesome.
Let it.
Roll with it. The thing you don't want to do is you don't want to come up with such a strict or stringent idea about what it is that you need to do that you feel like you're always a hammer looking for a nail. That to me, that's no fun. That's when the story dies, when you can suddenly find yourself in a situation where just you're like, oh man, nothing feels like it fits my character.
Yeah,
So I'm
right.
not going to do anything.
Yeah, I
So-
think if you get to that point, it's time to kind of
Right.
look at expanding a little bit and opening yourself up
Right.
so that you're not so restricted.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's a good answer. This is another topic that might be helped in some ways by our homework
Right.
for this week or for
Right.
this episode. So I think there's definitely more to be discussed here, but it falls into this whole conversation that we have all the time about how do we craft narrative and how do we contend with a situation where we may not be familiar enough with the game to know what the quests are, know what the places are, and know what the characters are. How can we create a flexible enough framework that we can play through this without knowing that stuff and still feel like we have a cohesive, interesting story going on? And it all boils down to understanding your character so intimately that when you're presented with these things, you can just, the direction you need to go with this stuff.
Right.
So
Think as your character.
Yeah.
Right? Don't act as
No, I
Yep.
think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Try to think as your character.
all right. So that's the last one,
That's
right?
the last of the questions for this time around, but we would invite people to submit as many questions as they have
Yeah,
for the
Absolutely.
next round.
absolutely. Okay, fellas, I think we're about ready to hit our homework segment here, are we not?
I think we're ready for homework.
Sure.
It's been a really long time since I have been in a place where we were issuing instead of necessarily only accepting homework,
Yes,
Exactly.
All right, so we're going to come back with homework segment here in just a moment.
Here at Lost Barrel Brewing, we have a long tradition of crafting only the finest in ancient lagers. Great brews begin with great ingredients, and Draugr Lager is made from only the finest grains and hops, aged for thousands of years. Every batch is brewed with ice-cold water drawn from the deepest caverns below the earth, checked for body parts, and triple filtered through fairly clean burial linens, then aged for hundreds of years in elder gleam barrels. Draugr Lager is good and is not meant for barmy, soft-gutted, plug-ugly tossers. Draugr Lager, the great taste of the undead with no bitter afterlife.
All right, welcome
Homework
back,
segment.
everyone. It is homework time. First and foremost, let's get one thing off the table. We are at
Off the table.
We are at the halfway point in Season 1. Episode 4 marks the halfway point. If you go out and take a look at the schedule on CharacterCrusade.com, you are going to see that we've got everything mapped out there. The finale comes in Episode 8, and we're going to try to do something fun and interesting to highlight the characters we've created. But Episode 4 is kind of that point where we're hitting around level 30. Everyone is approaching level 30. That range, we're talking about high-level gameplay. So, no more level caps. We are not doing any more level caps after Episode 4. So you are free to just play to your heart's content. And the reason that we're doing that is twofold. The first is that I think level caps are becoming difficult for people to hit as it becomes harder to maintain levels or get levels. It becomes much slower, right? And level caps are much, much more important at low level. At low level is where you want the caps. When a person can sit down and play 2 hours and go up 5 levels, you want a situation or a mechanism in place that will allow us to stay at all roughly the same level so that the conversations are relevant.
Yeah. Right.
So Episode 4, level caps go away. And I think that is a model that we're going to follow for future seasons as well, unless for some reason the challenge that we've laid out dictates otherwise. Right? All right.
I like the approach. Midway, take off.
Right.
Well, yeah, because at this point,
Yeah.
Some people are ready
at
to
this
fly.
point, it becomes more of a hindrance than a help. So,
Right. And it's really difficult once you hit level 30 to distinguish the kinds of things that a level 30 character is doing that are different from the things that a level 40 character is doing.
right.
I mean,
Whereas a level 20 versus a level 8 is vastly different.
yeah,
Kind of,
exactly.
yes.
So,
Exactly. So, level caps are now off the table. Okay, so let's actually get to the homework. The homework for tonight was inspired by an exchange that I had with folks on Discord. I think it was Friday night. No, when I forget what night it was. Maybe it was Thursday night. It was Thursday night. I think I got home from working a late shift at the coffee shop, and I jumped on Discord, and I saw a whole discussion in there, but people were getting frustrated, like they felt like they were losing track of their stories, and they weren't sure what to do with their characters. They felt like they were floundering a
Must
little
level
bit.
up.
And so we had a little bit of a pep talk session where I kind of laid out some ideas, but I thought it would be helpful for homework this time around to really focus in like a laser on this issue of making sure that you could propel your character forward, and try to give you some practical tools in order to do that. Yes, oranges. Oranges is the key.
What?
oranges.
I would encourage you to go delve back into the archives
All right, I'll
from
do that.
Thursday night
Yeah,
on
but
Discord.
After the conversation earlier about lemons and grapefruit, I was concerned that we were dealing with another situation.
No, well,
Okay, good.
yeah,
Oranges. I'll
oranges.
check in the
I
oranges.
was a little bit off my nut on Thursday night, and I went on a tear on Discord
Okay.
Although-
that
I'll go
got
look
into
for it.
oranges.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of citrus,
Mhm.
Shell Shocked will be come out soon. So just let you know.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I'm glad for that.
It's a nice Nice Rodler by Shells.
Okay.
If you're looking for some kind of
And
spring citrusy kind of
I
fruit.
do like citrus in my beer.
So
I
it's-
do.
And
I enjoy it
it's a
immensely.
grapefruit. So
Is it?
Mhm.
Ooh, I like that even
You'd like it.
better.
So for the Shellerator
Hopefully.
that's listening,
Yeah.
Joe, Stu, and the Character Crusade folks could do with a bit of a Shell's citrusy sort of sponsorship.
if
it
we were
sounds
to get a
like.
Shells, we'd be shocked.
Yes.
Correct.
How's that?
We'd be politely
All right.
and pleasantly shocked.
I think I've
I
totally
know.
derailed the conversation,
That's
but
all right. Are you gonna
Oh,
have
not
a
at all.
Little graphic blip with. Can I just? I know since we were already off topic when you said go to charactercrusade.com and do that, I was going to say what's the URL for that, and then I just shook my own head because it was so stupid. But I had to tell you. Anyway, go ahead. Homework. Oranges.
Meanwhile,
All right,
in
this is what you're gonna
Character
do.
Crusade
Oranges.
Studio.
We're calling this homework engine and fuel. All right? We're going to try and figure out the engine that drives our character forward and then what fuels that engine. Okay? And this is the way that we're going to do this, because if you can identify what this engine is and what the fuel is, I don't believe that you will ever be hurting for a direction for your character. Okay?
It's almost stupid simple. I mean,
Yeah.
really.
It is.
But
And we're going to give you some
kinda brilliant.
specific examples based on our own characters, both past and present, okay? So here's the idea. You've already done your circles of character conflict. What we want you to do is home in on that very center circle, your character's relationship with self, and think about what is the engine that propels your character forward. And by what I mean by that is our characters in these playthroughs in Skyrim, they're doers. They get out there and they do stuff and they get stuff done and they're driven by something to do these things. And that's what sets them apart from the rest of the populace in Skyrim. All right? Everyone else is focused on being farmers and being shopkeepers and doing all these things, right?
And
But
just
there's
being.
something about your character that drives them in a different direction than everyone else. So the key is to figure out what is that engine and then what is it that fuels it, okay? And so I'm going to give you an example, and I've written some down here, but I'll start out with Raiden, okay? Because that is my Unbound character. He's the most recent. So Raiden is driven, the engine that drives him is he is seeking purpose. He is seeking purpose. He wants to know what his purpose in the world is, and that drives everything that he does every day of his life, trying to figure out what is my purpose in the world. And the reason for that is because what I've done is I've identified in his background that he was raised by his mother to be this Ashaba undead slayer, and then she suffered an untimely death, and he's left kind of not having the complete answer about what his mission is. And so he's really struggling trying to find his purpose. And what is fueling this engine of finding purpose is this crazy internal sense of duty that he has. He understands that he has a duty to society, to humanity, to perform this task. But what is my duty? What is it? What's that purpose? Okay? So think about that's the context I'm thinking about. So here's how we can put that into practice, in practical terms, right? So if suddenly I've gone through a dungeon and I've completed that mission and I've killed the bad guy and I find myself sitting in a tavern, I can start thinking about that engine, and I can think purpose. I'm sitting here eating this dinner in this tavern surrounded by these people who don't understand who I am and anything about me. What am I thinking about? Okay, I've just completed this thing now. Where am I going to search next if I'm looking for purpose? I'm going to try and find someone who might understand something about the Red Guard. I'm going to try and find books and information. I'm going to look for another mission that I can use as a test case to see is this my duty? Is this my purpose? right? He's looking. He's looking around for things. So when we think about a scenario, when we're talking about a character like Fleet Featherstone, the engine that drove Fleet Featherstone was revenge. Revenge, revenge, right? That was what his story was about. And the fuel that ran his revenge engine was rage. It was anger, all right? So he had this idea in his head of certain people that he needed to seek vengeance upon, all right? But the thing is, when you're getting revenge, you're only getting revenge at the time that you're killing that person, all right? In all other times, you're seeking revenge. So what does a person do who's seeking revenge? They're trying to find their targets. They're looking for their targets. They're looking under every rock and stone. They're doing research. They're talking to people. They're wandering Skyrim. Now you can see, when you look at it in this sense, now suddenly you don't feel like you're wandering anymore, okay? If you're wandering around Skyrim and so forth, you're wandering around but with a purpose, right? So rather than feeling like you're floundering around and you're saying, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just walking down this road and I don't understand why and I'm going to the next town. Well, maybe the answer you're looking for is in that next town. Maybe you've made the decision that I don't know where I'm going next, but what I do know is that I can't stand still because there's something driving me forward. And maybe there is a period of time where I am a wanderer, but I'm going into town and I'm talking to people and so forth. And so the thing to remember here is what this does is it changes the way that you look at the writing that you're doing, okay? So instead of thinking of your writing as an opportunity to just regurgitate in chronological order the things that your character did, use your writing as a way to create the narrative around these scenarios that address your character's engine and fuel. So what I mean by that is think of the writing that you do in your character journals is rather than being a historical accounting of what your character did, think of them as if they were written versions of a cutscene that I would make in a Fleet video. What am I doing with those cutscenes? I'm taking those cutscenes and I'm using them to basically say, I found this book and it had this passage in it that was suddenly important. Or I overheard this conversation between two NPCs that had some impact on me personally. Or I discovered that the guy in the next town cheated me out of a whole bunch of money. Or, what you're doing is that is the glue. Your writing is the glue. So change the way that you're thinking about your writing, identify what the engine and the fuel is, and use those things together. The engine is what drives you, the fuel is what keeps pushing you forward, and the narrative you create in your writing is what creates these little tiny bits of story that tie all of this shit together into a whole. All right?
I have to go do this right now.
All right, do it. So I'm hoping that this makes sense, and I have other examples, but I wanted to let you guys chime in. That's me just laying out the concept. All right? It's just a different way of thinking about the same things.
But it is simple.
It is.
Everybody can do it for their character.
It is.
And you don't have to overanalyze it. It's probably right in front of you.
So, wait, Fleet was a revenge story?
In a manner of speaking.
I thought he was a pacifist.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
In a manner of speaking.
It was mostly, the story was mostly about hairstyles and clothing. But
well, yeah,
there was a little
clothing for
revenge.
sure. So
yeah.
But again, simple approach.
it is. So I guess, to offer a couple of cents of my own for my current van. So I would say what? The engine would be greed.
Yep.
He's a greedy, self-absorbed kind of person.
Yeah.
And what fuels him is notoriety, glory. Why do you think he went through the trouble of looking for these paper mirror books.
Greed and fame rarely end well, but I think
Well,
that's
no,
but
that's
it's wonderful.
That may be true,
Yeah.
but that's the stage he's in.
Yeah.
Will he stay there? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
But-
that is an important point. The engine and the fuel changes over time or can
Right.
change.
So that's his greed
It's a
is
flex
his
fuel
engine. His
Mhm.
search for glory is his fuel. That's his passion. That's what drives him. So that's why he goes into all these barrows. That's why he plays at all these inns.
Mhm.
Because not only does he get a couple coins, not a lot, but he gets a free room
and some applause.
and some applause. And he likes that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It is
that's where he is
intoxicating.
right now.
The accolades
Yeah.
suck him in, you know.
Yeah, pretty much. For, I would say, Eneroth, it would have been, her engine would have been the search or inner peace. That was her engine. Ironically, the fuel for that engine was anger and rage,
Mm-hmm.
because she sought inner peace, but she didn't know anything else
Yeah.
until the very end.
Right.
So it was kind of a interesting opposites
That's very cool, though.
for her.
Right. And I imagine the way. Okay, so she's got this engine, right? She's pursuing inner peace, but she's got this distorted view of what it takes to achieve inner peace.
Yeah.
She thinks she's got to control everything around her,
Hmm.
you know, in order to achieve that. And in so doing creates lots of chaos.
Well, yeah, that
way.
and she's just so angry with everything,
Right.
and she doesn't know why.
Right.
So it took a long time
Yeah.
for her to get beyond that. And
Yeah.
finally she found that engine
Mm-hmm.
eventually, but it took
Right.
a long, long time
Right.
of hurting and anger.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Boy,
So
See, and I don't have anything on my current character, but Ingastagander, most of her engine was finding her brother, right? Who we
Sure.
lost early
sure,
on,
family.
somewhat to the elements, right?
yeah, the engine was lost.
Was lost, absolutely. But
Mhm.
the problem is that the fuel started off well because it was just sort of this thirst for knowledge, but there was only one way that she could continue to satisfy that curiosity, and that was with skooma.
Sure.
And so it was a destructive fuel. I mean, it was ruining the engine. It was making it
Right.
impossible to
Right.
continue on because there wasn't really anything to be attained there.
Right.
But it's one of the engine being lost is a really challenging one because you have to find yourself in Skyrim doing all these things that you never thought that you would do in the pursuit of knowledge,
Yeah.
right?
Not all engines take E85.
That's true. This one took flaming fuel before it even got in the engine. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but that made it a very different story and quite destructive,
Mhm.
both on
Yeah.
the inside and
Oh,
on
sure.
the outside for her. So,
But very
Uh,
interesting.
and it'll be very different for this young Khajiit
Right.
who has shown up in Winterhold. So,
Yeah. Absolutely. So that's kind of the concept. Let's try Etienne from the passage. Etienne, his engine was hate. He was driven by hate, and he was driven by hate for the Thalmor because the Thalmor were controlling him. He was under their thumb, and he couldn't escape. And the fuel that drove his hate was fear. It was fear that they would hurt his sister, that they would hurt his family. Right? So every time he was doing a task, he may not have been attacking the Thalmor directly. He may have been attacking the Forsworn at the command of the Thalmor, but he was projecting his hate for the Thalmor onto the Forsworn, and he was driven by this fear, right? And so think about how that drives you, right? And when we got to that point where he found himself at the end of that quest, he's like, I've killed every Forsworn. I've gutted every Forsworn camp in the Reach. What do I do now? That was when he had that transitional moment where he said, now it's time for me to take some more direct action against the Thalmor to try to save my sister. He was still driven by hate, still acting out of fear, but he was changing who he was projecting that hate upon and what action he was taking. Still driven by the same engine, however. All right? Another one, let's think about Marl. Marl is driven by this insatiable need he has to repair his reputation. His reputation has been tarnished. The engine that drives him is he's seeking respect. He wants to get back this respect that he's lost, and it's fueled by shame. Right? So his work has been discredited, and he has been stripped of his rank, he's been stripped of his wealth, and he's been dropped in Skyrim, basically excommunicated from his group and humiliated. And now he's driven by this idea that he wants to build back his reputation, and he's terrified that he's going to die and that his legacy is going to be this lame thing, right? After he's spent hundreds of years doing this research and stuff that he's very proud of, and now suddenly it's all torn down, and he's afraid he's going to die and people are going to remember him for his massive failure instead of for all the stuff that he's done all of his life. Now, imagine how that drives a character. He's not going to sit around on his laurels in a tavern. He's going to go out and he's going to look for places to do research, for places to make an impact, for things that he can do, stuff like that, right? So that's how that works. So Marl's an interesting example just because his is a little bit different. I think Twist, the engine for him is he's looking for acceptance, and the fuel for him are his insecurities. So he's been discarded by a tribe, he's been discarded by the Imperials, he's grown up in an orphanage, and now he's out to prove to the world that he has worth. And he believes in his heart of hearts that he doesn't. He believes that he doesn't have any worth. And so he's climbing to, going to ever greater extremes to try to prove to the world that he's smarter, that he's better, that he's more capable, all that stuff. All right? So those are my thoughts. I think those are some pretty good examples. I've got an example for Idastog too, but I'm not really going to reveal that one right now since I'm getting in the middle of his story.
Big reveal.
Boom. Drop it.
Booyah.
Drop it like it's hot. Drop it like it's hot.
And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I do have a drinking problem.
He does.
They're suggesting that he needs to use a straw to drink his beer.
They caught that,
Apparently
huh?
it comes out. Yeah, of course they caught that.
It's only because of those giant canines, right?
Yeah. Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah. So,
Excellent example.
anything else to add, guys, on that? I guess the
no, I
actual
think those
homework, guys, is think about what the engine is. Think about what the fuel is. Write those down. Just make a brief note to yourself on what those things
Right.
are currently, understanding that they can change, and then adjust your writing. If you have to, adjust your
Right.
writing and use your writing as a way to glue that narrative together. Make shit up.
Glue.
Make shit up.
Yes.
That's
Make
what we
glue.
do. And you know what? If you feel like your character is stuck, write something down and engineer a problem.
Yeah, when you feel yourself kind of lost or where to go next, go back to that engine and the fuel.
Yes.
Mhm.
And look at it, reevaluate it,
Yeah.
and see how it pertains.
Yeah.
Or has it changed?
Yep.
Sanok has changed.
Yep.
I mean, his fuel originally started as loss, really, or his engine was loss. His fuel was fear.
Mm-hmm.
He was afraid that he'll never get back. Well, now he's come to a point where he knows he's never going to get back what he lost.
Yeah.
So now I'm at a point with that particular character, and I've done nothing with it. I still have video I haven't done anything with, but I'm at a point now where I've got to reevaluate what's his drive and what's driving it.
Yeah.
So it does change.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got time to work on it.
Yeah. And believe
Except
me,
for EJ, because EJ says EJ's done.
this is the deal. I mean, I struggle with this all the time. I'm always struggle with this. So it's just not a big deal. I mean, I've created so many series where I've had to try and paste together different things using cutscenes. And this is the dialogue that I'm having inside my head about these characters all the time, thinking, okay, boil it down, Stu, boil it down. What's the engine? What's driving him? What would he do next?
Yeah. So
So
just to reiterate,
no worries.
the engine would be what drives you, what drives the character, and the fuel is what does that character use to keep that engine running?
Mm-hmm.
What's
Right.
he use to satisfy that drive?
Exactly. Yep. So if your character's engine is revenge and you've just killed one of the enemies on your hit list, right? It's not over, right? And it may be that at that point your character changes in some way, that the engine changes. But that's when you got to kind of understand that you've reached a transition point, right? So in the case of Raiden, I reached a transition point where, early on, he was, he's always been driven by this idea of trying to understand what his purpose is, all right? And he was driven by that. What's my purpose? Fueled by this idea that I have this duty that I don't understand, but I know it's there. Now that he's hit his transition, things are changing a little bit. Now his engine is about redeeming himself. So his engine is about redemption. How do I redeem myself? And he's driven, this fuel that drives that engine of redemption is shame about what he did. He killed 2 people in cold blood. He realizes what he did wrong. He doesn't want to become an animal. That's not how he was trained to be. So now the engine has changed. Now it's about redemption. Okay? And that may change. It could easily change from, one episode to the next, depending on how chaotic your things are going for your story. But I think if you frame things up in those terms, it makes it easier to think about. So,
Well, it helps bring a little focus.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it
Yeah.
will change. And these two things can change independently.
mm-hmm.
Your drive might remain while what drives it
Yes.
may change.
That is very, very insightful.
Well,
right? Because
I'm
think
not
about
as insightful as I sound because I'm actually borrowing it from
But
Demorg.
it's very true. I mean, if you think about that, you may have satisfied that original fuel,
Yeah.
or
you burned it
quite
up,
literally
and
burned
now
it up.
you're using something.
Mhm.
You're
You're
that's
using.
YER. Thank you.
Thank you.
Or
But is the next fuel more volatile,
Mhm.
is it more stable?
or is it more stable? Exactly.
So
Right.
yes, these things do change, and they will change, and they probably should change. And they may or may not change independently.
Yeah.
They very likely will.
And I think one of the things that it's very easy if you have a character that's bent on revenge and suddenly the last enemy is killed and you've got an engine of revenge that's fed by rage fuel and now
there's no fuel.
now suddenly there's no fuel left and the engine is being starved and the engine is starting to stall. That's when you find yourself in a transitional moment, and what can happen is your character can either develop a new engine, or this lack of purpose or this hole can cause them to go off the deep end, and that's a whole different direction in the story, but a completely legit one, right? And maybe your
You won't
character
level up
goes
as a hermit, will you?
well, maybe the character goes through a period of ultimate chaos
Mhm.
before they figure out what that new engine is,
Mhm.
right? But at that point, you can boil it down and basically say, okay, having satisfied this revenge quest or whatever it is, the new engine for my character is just this this pursuit of madness, right? And it's fueled by a lack of purpose. And so that's when you go off the deep end, right? And you
Right.
start doing crazy shit that is out of character for your character previously. But now,
because you've lost your entire purpose.
yeah,
You've
you're
extinguished.
It's all
the
you know,
need for
and-
your
yeah,
purpose.
you are the rudderless ship, right? And you do a whole bunch of crazy stuff. You get yourself thrown in jail. You get chased down by guards. You get all this stuff happening. But
Thugs.
that all can
He
culminate
was always such a quiet
in something
neighbor.
else, right?
Yeah.
So
Not always the truth.
anyway, yeah, try not to look at it in the negative if you can, and if you find yourself suddenly without an engine and in complete chaos, understand that too is an engine of a different type, and embrace it and just go with it and see where it leads.
So
So-
fun homework,
Yeah,
except for EJ.
I'd like to
who's done.
think all of this homework is fun.
I would like to think
but-
so. Yeah,
But
But-
if you come up against the challenges, I mean, if you're not in the Discord, consider joining it. If you
Please
are,
do.
lean on each other because there's some great resources in one another.
And I imagine during the
And-
course of doing this homework, people who have questions that remain unanswered can submit them. And we
Absolutely.
can address them.
And all the above.
All the
You can you can always submit something through the form. That's for sure.
all right. So basically, Stu's telling me that I'm semi-normal. Ooh, good
No,
to
we
know.
never said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Packet Loss was having a real problem, and I think with a vampiric character, understanding.
Oh, yeah.
Mm.
'Cause, I mean, that adds a level of complexity
Yes.
on top of it.
Yep.
But, try to frame it up in these terms, Packet, and see if that helps you out at all. It might. And if it doesn't, jump back on Discord and we'll discuss it. We'll make glue, my friend.
We'll make glue.
Out of oranges.
Thanks for listening. For more about story and character, you can visit charactercrusade.com. We would appreciate any support you'd care to give us. You can do that by going to patreon.charactercrusade.com. And remember, this is a podcast. It is vitally important that you help us spread the word, and you can do that by going out to iTunes and giving us a rating or a review. That would be super helpful.
Or both.
You can do that. You will also find the podcast available on iTunes. You can get it from charactercrusade.com. Every episode is posted in our blog there as well. Also, remember, we've got some other stuff out there. Pocket Odysseys is one of those. You can go to pocket.charactercrusade.com and enjoy some bite-sized science fiction fantasy stories. That has been super fun to produce, and we're going to keep trying to crank those out every Friday if we can. You'll find us on Twitter at CharacterWonk, on Facebook at facebook.charactercrusade.com, and join our Discord community for God's sake at discord.charactercrusade.com. Thank you all very much, and we will see you for episode 5 in 2 weeks. What do you think, guys? Is that good? Is that a wrap?
That was excellent.
I think that's a wrap.
All right, wonderful. Episode 7 is always the ASMR episode, right? Where everything is whispered. And then my character fought some trolls. Joe sounds pretty good. Maybe a little bit hotter.
Am I
than
a
the
little
rest
hot?
of us.
All right.
Yeah.
A little hot.
Well, I mean, you know what I
That's to be
just
expected.
Joe.
uh-huh.
I've got a lot of mammoth meat.
Was that whole thing a run up to that joke? Joe Ben's mammoth meat.
Got so much meat.
I've got so much meat. I can't give it away.
No, okay, now we got to go explicit on this one.
Like we weren't anyway.
Okay.
Matt, we've been waiting for this. The end song.
Wow. That's been a long time. Wow.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Bye-bye.